that too high? But I think I'm okay.
I don't know, these chairs.
They are what they are.
Yeah.
I don't usually use the
Like
app
when Ann
on
leaves,
the
right?
iPad.
I always like it when Ann leaves, right when we're going to start. Like,
It's called Granicus?
yeah, there's
Okay.
nobody here to they roll.
I have it. I thought I did.
If you've got a
Oh.
new iPad, you have to
That'll work.
download it.
It must be not,
No, this is just my personal one, actually.
Oh,
so-
okay.
But I downloaded it.
Okay, are we ready? Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Albany City Council meeting for March 5th, 2018. Let's please join Vice Mayor Rochelle Nason in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Would you call the roll, please?
Here.
Here. We have three proclamations this evening. The first one is for the Red Cross. If we could have Red Cross representatives come to the podium and meet Councilmember Pilch.
I'm happy to read this proclamation in times when we seem to be needing the Red Cross, unfortunately, more and more. Whereas American Red Cross Month is a special time to recognize and thank the Red Cross volunteers and donors who give of their time and resources to help members of the community. And whereas across the country and around the world, the American Red Cross responds to disasters big and small. And whereas the American Red Cross saw a record-breaking year in 2017 of challenging domestic and international response efforts, and whereas the American Red Cross responded to many large and complex disasters in 2017, including back-to-back hurricanes, deadliest wildfires in California history, horrific mass shootings, and nearly 50,000 home fires, providing casework assistance to help 76,000 families recover. And whereas the American Red Cross collects about 40% of the nation's blood supply, provides 24-hour support to military members, veterans, and their families, teaches millions life-saving skills such as lifeguarding and CPR, and through its Restoring Family Links program, connects family members separated by crisis, conflict, or migration. And whereas we would like to applaud our heroes here in Albany who give of themselves to assist their neighbors and deliver help and hope during a disaster, now therefore be it proclaimed that the Albany City Council hereby proclaims March 2018 as American Red Cross Month and encourages all to support the American Red Cross mission to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman. My name is Martin Johnson, and I am a member of the Alameda County Red Cross Leadership Council, and joining me tonight is Madeline Biskinowski. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. And it's our great honor to accept this special proclamation from the City of Albany declaring March as Red Cross Month. You may know or not know that starting in 1943 during World War II, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt proclaimed the first Red Cross Month. Since that time, every president, including President Trump, has designated March as Red Cross Month throughout America. And as the councilman said, 2017 was certainly a very busy year for the American Red Cross throughout California and other states. Our key focus continues to be disaster response, and in 2017, there was 219 home fire incidents here in Alameda County and 828 in our Northern California region. In the Northern and Southern California wildfires last fall, over 4,000 cases were opened to help those in need. Over 40 shelters were opened during the fires in Sonoma, Napa, Lake, and Mendocino counties. We continue to help those victims to this day. The households assisted were 5,752 in the region and 669 here helped in Alameda County last year. Our local active volunteers in the region exceed 13,000, and in Alameda County, 1,495 volunteers. We continue to do very well in the collection of blood, with over 74,000 donations this past year and 29,000 in Alameda County alone. So on behalf of Alameda County Leadership Council and the California Coastal Region, we thank you for this proclamation, but most of all, we would like to thank you and the many of your city staff members and city officials who have worked very closely with the American Red Cross over the years to be a better prepared city for all types of emergencies and future disasters in our communities. And I particularly have heard very good things about the city of Albany and how it works very well with the Red Cross. So we really do appreciate that, and thank you for your time and this proclamation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just one word. Again, my name is Madeline Biskintawi. I'm one of your main contact at the Red Cross, and I've been working with Chief Calkins and his team for many years. And again, we have a great year that in 2017, and we are looking for more activities together again this year. So again, thank you very much, and for Chief Calkins and his team, thank you so much. And if it's possible, like every year, we'd like to take a picture with the team as well. Sure. If it's okay.
Let's do that fairly quickly. Do you want to come up here and have this seal and...
Somebody can help us from the audience? What's the best way to do this?
this way?
Yeah.
You guys come and stand right here. Yeah. In front of us.
Should we stand up? So
We'll stand up so we're in the picture too.
yeah.
Michael, are you going to scoot over? And our second proclamation this evening is in honor of the 59th anniversary of the Tibetan uprising. Councilmember Maz will meet the appropriate people at the podium.
City of Albany proclamation in honor of the 59th anniversary of the Tibetan National Uprising. Whereas on March 10th, 2018, Californians, including Tibetan Americans residing in Albany and surrounding regions, will gather to commemorate the 59th anniversary of the Tibetan National Uprising. And whereas the City of Albany has a diverse ethnic population, including Tibetan Americans who are concerned about human rights and freedom in the U.S. and throughout the world. And whereas on October 17th, 2007, His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal in recognition of his many enduring and outstanding contributions to peace, nonviolence, human rights, and religious understanding. And whereas the 2016 International Religious Freedom Report for China, published by the Department of State, stated, in the Tibet Autonomous Region and other Tibetan areas, authorities engaged in widespread interference in religious practices especially in Tibetan Buddhist monasteries and nunneries. And whereas the 2016 country reports on human rights practices for China, published by the Department of State, stated, under the professed objectives of controlling border areas, maintaining social stability, combating separatism, and extracting natural resources, the government engaged in the severe repression of Tibet's unique religious, cultural, and linguistic heritage by, among other means, strictly curtailing the civil rights of the Tibetan population, including the freedoms of speech, religion, association, assembly, and movement. And whereas the United States has a long history of support to the Tibetan people, including the passage of the Tibet Policy Act of 2002, signed into law on September 30th, 2002, and whereas the Albany City Council affirms the determination of the Tibetan people in Tibet and outside, including the Tibetan Americans, to retain their heritage, now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Albany City Council that March 10th, 2018, the 59th anniversary of the Tibetan National Uprising, shall be officially recognized as Tibet Day. And be it further proclaimed that the City of Albany stands in solidarity with the Tibetan people and their just, peaceful, and nonviolent movement.
Delek. So on behalf of the entire Tibetan community here in the Bay Area and Friends of Tibet, and also in the United States, and the entire Tibetan community and Friends of Tibet in exile, I would like to thank the City of Albany in presenting this proclamation. It's been a great honor to accept this proclamation on behalf of the entire Tibetan communities and friends. And I would also like to inform that 2018 marks 10 years exactly after the 2008 mass uprising in Tibet, where thousands of Tibetans were killed. So I would like to thank, I have no words. Thank you so much. It's been a great to us.
Thank you.
So,
And if we can have a quick photo session, that would be great. Really quick.
sorry, sorry, I'm Tenzin Norbu. Sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. It's been so exciteful. I'm Tenzin Norbu. I'm the Vice President of the Tibetan community here in Bay Area. And she is Tring Dokar. She's the General Secretary. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. If you want to come up here, we'll do a photo. And you know, as elected officials, we love photos. So if somebody would like to send us a copy, that would be great.
Yeah.
And our third proclamation this evening is in honor of the Albany Film Fest. And if you could meet Councilmember Barnes at the podium, that would be great.
Hi, since the film festival has done so much, this is a long one. Just want to let you know. You can get closer. Okay. Whereas the Albany Film Fest, in its 8th consecutive year contributing to arts, education, and creative expression in our community, and whereas the Albany Film Fest was created by what was then the Ad Hoc Cable Committee, now the Community Media Access Committee in 2011, as a way to encourage community members to share their voices, their stories, and their creative visions through the medium of film, and whereas it grew quickly from a local one-day event into a successful week-long celebration that serves film-goers of all ages across the Bay and invites them to sample and enjoy our downtown Solano Avenue business district, and Whereas today the Albany Film Fest is a juried competition with a stellar judging panel of film professionals, and whereas audiences see an eclectic mix of independent, local, national, and international short films during Albany Film Fest week, and a varied series of events throughout the year, and whereas the Albany Film Fest supports young filmmakers with 2 special youth categories, ages 6 to 12 and 13 to 17, and special film showings specifically for youth, and encourages and facilitates the active participation of Albany schools, and whereas proceeds from the festival are used to fund youth media education in Albany in conjunction with the City of Albany, and whereas our 2011 Best in Show winner, Come to the Table, was screened at the White House, and whereas in 2013 the Albany Film Fest was named Visual Artist of the Year by the Albany Community Foundation, and whereas the 2015 Best in Show winner, Before the Bomb, was an official selection of the Emerging Filmmakers Showcase at the Cannes Film Festival, and whereas the 2016 Best in Show winner, Ferguson 365, was optioned by CNN and is being produced as a feature film, and whereas the Albany Film Fest has developed screenings devoted to current social topics such as the environment and science and the celebration of local women filmmakers. And finally, whereas the Albany Film Fest always features a special category, My Own Private Albany, devoted to films specifically about Albany and its citizens, and the Albany Filmmakers Showcase, which screens films made by Albany residents of all ages. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Albany City Council that March 17 through 25 is Albany Film Festival Week.
Good evening, I'm Jack Kenny, and this is Naomi Siegel, and we're some of the organizers of the Albany Film Fest. I want to thank the City Council for this resolution, and city staff for all its help, especially Jeremy Allen. And as many of you know, over the years, this film festival is homegrown, and it's gotten a little bit bigger every year. This year, as you can see behind me and on the back of these cards, it's 6 different screenings over 8 days, and we're very excited about the things that are coming up, and you can see them. There are special topic areas, as well as our familiar all short film day on the 25th at the Albany Theater. We really want to thank not only the city, but also some of our longtime legacy supporters, such as the Albany Community Foundation and the Solano Avenue Association. And as we've gone along each year and the festival's gotten bigger, we've picked up some new sponsors. This year we're happy to welcome Belmont Village and Google as 2 of our new sponsors. And Mechanics Bank has stepped up. They will be hosting our Gala Awards, which is the Albany version of the Academy Awards. So I hope those of you who are invited can make it, and otherwise come and enjoy the film festival.
I think Jack said it all. I just want to thank the City of Albany again for recognizing us again. We're very happy to have your support, so hope to see you all there. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Report on action taken in closed session. We met with staff, and we have nothing at this time to report back. Consent calendar. Consent calendar items are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. By approval of the consent calendar, staff recommendations will be adopted unless otherwise modified by the City Council. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or member of the audience requests removal of the items from the consent calendar. Does any council member wish to pull an item?
5-7, please.
I'm sorry, what?
5-7.
5-7, okay. Any others? Does any member of the public wish to pull an item number? 511. Yes, sir? 511, okay. Any others? Okay, Nick, what's?
Sure. So I just wanted to have some questions to clarify. I understand that this is an updated schedule that was required for us to conform to existing law. and that's fine. My question is about the steps. Some positions have up to 7 steps now, plus a longevity. Some have only 5. Some have only 1 step. City manager is 1. Council member and city treasurer makes sense because I think those salaries are set by the what's that? Charter. By the charter. But can you just give me an overview of why 5 steps for most positions, but then a number of exceptions?
Don't push it. Sorry.
Yeah.
So
I think if you...
this is reflective of our current salary schedule. So some of our bargaining units do have more steps than others. So it's just revising what was previously approved onto one document. It's not changing anything.
Certainly, but could you just explain, is it just historical context, or, will the steps change? I'd like to know how, for the bargaining units, I imagine they set their steps, but otherwise, how do the steps get set?
Through the negotiation process. Mm-hmm.
Okay, even with the management employees?
Yes.
Oh,
Well, not necessarily for...
So the management employees are unrepresented employees, the former JPA employees. They have a standard of 5 steps.
Okay.
It's just historically, it has been 5 steps. Recently, there was the added longevity pay, step 6, which you'll see for the management confidential employees, unrepresented employees. That is for individuals that have been with the city over 10 years. But again, this is all going back to correct errors that CalPERS has seen through their audit trail.
Right.
So, but to answer your question, which isn't necessarily the topic of this staff report, is some bargaining units do have 7 steps and some have 5. It's just based on the MOUs with each of those bargaining unions.
Right, some seem to have 6 as well. And it's just historical precedent that the city manager just has the 1 step?
Right, it's been that way for several years.
Okay.
Historically, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's it for me.
And 511, would you like to come up and ask your question?
I have some photographs I'm passing out to you, and I also have a thumb drive that it would perhaps be easier to see the photographs if you'd like. I can give that to you. Okay.
These all, I guess these get distributed.
Okay. We purchased our home in 1972. It was a small 2-bedroom home constructed in 1926. I presume the sidewalk at that time, probably the original, was in reasonably good shape. I don't recall for sure. Shortly after we moved in, my wife canvassed the neighborhood, convincing most of the residents to spring for the cost of planting city-approved trees. We recognized the value of a tree-lined street and wanted our neighborhood to support that amenity. Fortunately, all those original trees have died. All that is, except ours. By 2006, our sidewalk looked like photograph number 1, which you have there in front of you. The city had been after us for some time to repair it, and when we received permission from the city to replace our garage, sewer lateral, and driveway, we replaced the sidewalk as well. When we dug out the old sidewalk, we saw a tangle of roots, some quite large. This was obviously what was causing the damage to the sidewalk, and that's shown in photo 2. We felt it was time to either severely cut back the roots or remove the tree. The city told us we could do neither. Rather, the solution was to shave the top of the roots to limit their growth, as you can see in photo number 3. This, we were assured, would be sufficient to provide for a reasonable life for the new sidewalk. When the sidewalk was finished, it looked like photo number 4. Now, 12 years later, it looks like photo number 5. A couple months ago, the city decided it should be ground to prolong its life. You can see where the grinding was performed in photos 5 and 6. It is obviously It is obvious that the invasive roots of this tree are rapidly destroying the new sidewalk. Surely you must agree that 12 years is not a reasonable lifespan for a sidewalk. I also point out that many sidewalks in Albany at the time we replaced ours in 2016 were in far worse condition than was ours and have still not been repaired or replaced. As far as I can tell, the proposed ordinance does not address issues such as this. I urge you to fix this portion of the ordinance before approving the second reading by at least granting an exception or pay for correction to those who tried to fix their tree and sidewalk problems by removing the tree but were not allowed to by the city. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable City Council, Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor. My name is Kieran Shenoy. I'm the Government Affairs Director for the Oakland-Berkeley Association of Realtors. I'd ask you to remove this item from the agenda tonight and perhaps continue it to the next regularly scheduled council meeting. Of special concern tonight is that I've gotten several calls from members very concerned about this ordinance, especially because they didn't hear anything about it before it was put up for a first reading. Now, I understand that there was supposed to be some community outreach regarding this ordinance. We were very happy when city staff reached out to the association regarding other point-of-sale ordinances or ordinances that would affect the transfer of property in the city of Albany, the building energy saving ordinance by example. But we did not receive any reach out about this ordinance whatsoever. I'd kindly request that you remove it from the agenda tonight and continue it to at least the next council meeting so the association and realtors could have a chance to weigh in. This is especially true because it won't hinder the July 1st implementation date that was stated by staff at the last council meeting. I believe that implementation of this ordinance was going to coincide with the new master fee schedule. So I think if realtors are going to be called on to implement the city's goals, and we don't necessarily disagree with the policy goal of creating safe and walkable sidewalks. It's just the mechanism by which this is trying to be implemented might be of concern to realtors, and we would really appreciate the time to weigh in. Thank you.
Thank you. Does staff want to comment?
It's, as the speaker noted, the implementation is targeted for July 1st. So if the council did want us to do some additional outreach, we'd be happy to do that, and it wouldn't necessarily affect the timing of the implementation of the program in the summer.
Are there thoughts from council?
I guess a question. Had you tried to outreach to the realtors?
Again, as the speaker said, he's correct that we did do some outreach on other subject matters. This ordinance was crafted in response to council direction when you adopted the sidewalk policy, I believe is in 2016.
Right.
And so we haven't done any outreach since the adoption of that policy. We could do that if, again, with council direction, we'd be happy to explain to not only the Realtors Association but other organizations as well.
Right.
Any other council thoughts?
No, that seems reasonable. In fact, I'll just move the consent calendar without this removing this item. I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Before you do that, could you clarify? Don't just say removing it. Could you remove it to a date certain or something?
What is the staff's pleasure as to when we should remove this to? Would it be 2 meetings from now or 1?
I think it depends on how quickly we can schedule an opportunity to do the proper engagement.
Okay, so how about a date uncertain?
Date uncertain.
Okay.
Date uncertain would be a little bit better.
It sounds like it could be done before July 1st, or we'd have enough time.
I would think so. There shouldn't be any reason we wouldn't be able to do that. And I would think in the next few weeks something could be set up.
And just to make sure that it's noted, which item is it?
511.
Oh, it's 511, yes. Removing item. To restate the motion, I move with the consent calendar with the removal of item 511 to a date uncertain, but before the implementation deadline of July 1st.
Are you seconding that?
Oh, yes, second.
Do we have discussion? You know, we've been working on this problem for years. We have discussed this ad nauseum in putting together our sidewalk parcel tax. It's difficult for me to comprehend that anyone who wanted to pay attention wasn't aware this was coming down. And so, you know, I don't think I'm going to vote in favor of this. I think we have talked through this a bunch, and I think we came up with a coherent plan. We did that before we put the parcel tax on the ballot, and I personally am done with this issue.
I'm just thinking with that in mind that we may need to have you help me out here. We may need to restate the motion because the motion is to accept pulling that out. Should we make a motion to pull it out and then go from there? Two separate motions?
It might be cleaner to have two separate motions.
Yeah.
One to approve the consent calendar absent item number 511, then a separate motion to continue, item 5-11.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll restate my motion as a motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of item 511.
I'll second that.
Could you poll the council, please?
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Pilch?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nason?
Yes.
Mayor McQuaid?
Yes. And now can we get a motion?
Sure.
511?
I'll move that we continue item 511 to a date uncertain, but before the implementation deadline of July 1st.
May I make a comment in association with my second? I agree with Mr. Barnes. This has been something that, you know, has been pending for years, and it's really we were able as a city to pass the sidewalk tax to make it less onerous for people to get this done. But on the other hand, I've had experience at Lake Tahoe with changing out wood stoves for gas stoves. And it was very much our experience that having a positive relationship with the real estate community was a big help in making it happen. So although I do agree with you, I'm going to second the motion.
Could you poll the council, please?
Councilmember Barnes?
No.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Pilch?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nason?
Yes.
Mayor McQuaid?
Yes. The motion carries. Thank you all. Where are we here? Okay, good of the city. Good of the city is a time for persons desiring to address the city council on an item that is not on the agenda. Please note city policy limits each speaker to 3 minutes. The Brown Act limits the council's ability to take and/or discuss items that are not on the agenda. Therefore, such items are normally referred to staff for comment or for a future agenda. Do we have speakers?
Yes. Jeremiah and Elaine.
I'll go first. You want to go first?
Good evening. My name is Elaine. I am the wife of Jeremiah Manuel Guerra-Penguelo. And I just want to thank Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council members, City Attorney, staff for the opportunity to give him his civic duty to speak on behalf of the City of Albany. He is always looking out for the City of Albany, and I just want to thank you for giving him and all the people here present for doing their civic duty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, City Council and the community. My name is Jeremiah. Tonight I'm going to talk about a few things here. One is I would like to invite the City Council and the entire City of Albany to the UC Giltrakt Farm. We have a couple events coming up, March 11th and March 25th and April 8th from 1 to 3:30. and we're teaching everybody how to be farmers and grow your own food. And let's see here. And it's free, and you will learn a lot. And also at the farm, already this year, the farm has accumulated about 2,500 work hours with over 1,000 volunteers this year in 2018 already. The farm has produced over 1,000 pounds of vegetables and herbs, and over 50 groups/field trips have come to the farm. And what I should have mentioned first is congratulations, Mayor, on your new park. And I think that's a really great thing, so I want to say congratulations on that. And also, I have a positive suggestion for the new park. I don't know, I was there the other day, and I noticed that there's stop signs on Solano and Pierce, but when you get to Washington and Pierce, there's no stop signs where Washington meets Pierce. And I know a lot of the community is going to be wanting to go to the park, and the traffic on Pierce is going to be flying right there. So maybe we could implement a stop sign there on Washington to make it safer for people to go to the park and cross the street. Otherwise, people have to cross down Solano. You know people are going to want to cross the street if they park on the other side. So just to make it safer. And also, last but definitely not least, is school zones. I was there up on Talbot today and talking with Corinne. And I was there, and she was doing her school zone thing, and we observed a kid with his mom and his brother or sister, and he was dribbling a basketball, crossing the sidewalk, and he shouldn't have done that, but the ball hit the corner of the curb, and it flew out in the street, and cars were coming, and Corinne was right there to stop the cars, because these kids haven't learned to not chase a ball. And I was able to help talk to the kid about that golden rule. So with your help, City Council, I would like to, this has been a pending thing for the past 5 years as well. This has been pending for a long time. So if we can get this to be talked about on a future agenda item, I'd really appreciate it. And I have my email address on my speaker card. If you could send me an email on your thoughts, if anything, would be great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other speakers?
Spoke last. I'm Peter Campbell, resident of Albany. And I have two things on my mind this evening. One, if you look on that white wall behind Peter Moss, there's a little smudge down there. I like to pay attention to what you guys are saying and doing, particularly when I'm watching you on television. That's the smudge right there. I find it very distractive because it always shows up over your shoulder on the TV. So if there's any way to get that removed, I think that would be wonderful, and it would improve our attention span as it relates to what you have to say. It's been bothering me for a year or more. Okay, secondly, I want to say that an attractive environment is vital to the economic success of a commercial district. Unfortunately, Albany's commercial district fails this test. The sidewalks are a disgrace to the community. Cigarette butts are everywhere, and food wrappers and other trash can be found up and down Solano Avenue, particularly around shops that sell food and snack items. There are insufficient trash receptacles to encourage proper disposal. The existing compactor trash and recycle machines do not invite use, but do invite graffiti. Merchants often do not take pride in their storefronts, and the no smoking on Solano ordinance is never enforced. For the good of the city, I urge you to work on appropriate solutions to improve the situation. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Seeing none, we'll move on. Item 7, council member reports on meetings attended and announcements of future meetings, city manager report and comments. 7.1, city council subcommittee regarding Albany waterfront memorandum, next steps on the Albany bulb and Buchanan right-of-way. Vice Mayor Nason, would you give the report, please?
Yes, I hope this is fairly self-explanatory from the memo and the email. The council formed a subcommittee of myself and the mayor to assist the staff with the selection of a consultant for the environmental document or documents that will need to be created pursuant to the Memorandum of Understanding with the East Bay Regional Park District. On review of what we needed to do, we realized that there are some ambiguities and areas of unclearness in the MOU that we feel we need to get some further refinement in order to be sure that we do not, as has unfortunately happened many times in the history of the waterfront, that we don't go down an expensive path to create a document that turns out not to be usable for the purposes for which it is created. I won't go into more detail. There are technical issues, and we have written to the Park District. Your city manager has written to the Park District, and we are awaiting a response. And so we would come back to you after hearing from the Park District.
Are there any questions from council?
Yeah, I have a, are you asking for an action tonight on this?
Well, it's really a report because you did authorize. Well, yes, actually, there is an action, and the action is to make sure that the money that was set aside, the $300,000 that we budgeted, will not be diverted to other uses as a result of this deferral. Which could very well go into a new fiscal year. So the action being requested is that the council reserve that fund as a separate discretionary fund that can be used only for the bulb.
Yeah, I don't think that I have a problem with this, but isn't this part of the agenda usually of just reports? And I'm wondering whether we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves and going for an action that maybe should have been in some other part of the agenda, or
maybe it should have been unfinished business, but
well, we moved it around several times, and I think there are recommendations in the report, and so I think that's why there is an action here.
Yeah, but is this?
Yeah, it's a little out of format, but if we broke it up into pieces, it would be a little clunky too, and this is a unique item where it is a report on a subcommittee's activities with a recommendation attached. So really, your council agenda presumes action depending on how the material is written, and the recommendation is clearly on the agenda for this evening for the public as well.
I'm curious if Craig could weigh in on this, because like I say, it's not that I don't think this may not be a good idea, but I'm just wondering if we're.
I think for purposes of Brown Act requirements, it's agendized properly, because the agenda description does contemplate particular actions that are recommended. I can understand the confusion, though, because it's on a part of the agenda that's typically for informational items.
Right.
So it may be in the wrong spot on the agenda, but in terms of meeting the substantive notice requirements of the Brown Act, it's sufficient for you to take action.
Well, I guess perhaps echoing Pete's comments, I'm a little uncomfortable. I think I would want to make a motion, and a formal motion to approve the recommendations if we were to go that way. But I'm a little comfortable with this being the public hearing for this matter. I think that if someone is scanning the agenda, they might not see, because usually there isn't, the action embedded in this item. So I would feel more comfortable bringing this back as an action item on a future agenda, with it remaining a report for today.
Michael, do you have a thought?
And what would the future action be? I mean, the issue here is we're sitting on $300K and we want to sort of save it at the appropriate level of discretion. So one, we don't spend it on, pothole repairs, but we don't want to pigeonhole it so completely, and we've made these mistakes in the past, that we have money left over in lots of tiny buckets that we can't spend effectively. So I have no problem in sort of locking the money down for the sake of the bulb, if that is indeed a problem, and if we can do that in a way that makes sense. I mean, that just seems a reasonable place to start to me.
I think that's the intent. I mean, I'm not sure what you call it in government accounting. In nonprofit accounting, you call it a board-designated reserve, meaning the council could decide at some future date to spend it on something else entirely. We are not binding even ourselves, much less a future council. But we are sending the message to the Park District and the rest of the concerned community that we are reserving this for the bulb, and that they need not be concerned that if we take more time to meet with the Park District and give this more thought and study, that the money will not disappear as a result of the deferral.
Would the funds have disappeared if we didn't take this action? If we delayed doing the CEQA process or didn't go that route, what would have happened to the?
The funds would remain unspent, but what we are doing by taking this action is ensuring that they remain dedicated for the specific use at the waterfront bulb, unless the council at some future action determines that the funding should be utilized somewhere else.
I think it's really another way of directing staff to include the $300,000 in the budget for next year if it hasn't been spent at the end of this fiscal year.
And I think it's also important, where we've already decided and sent out the RFP for proposals for CEQA, that we take action that we're at least postponing that at this time, since we actually were scheduled to meet with the consultants, and we stopped that process pending council action. I think we need to kind of complete that piece of it also.
As you'll see, the action also is that we continue to try and be proactive and organize a meeting with East Bay Regional Park District to answer some of these questions and make sure that we're in a communication where everyone is understanding where we are going forward. And so that's really the gist of the overall intent in this, putting the CEQA process on hold for the time being, understanding that that money will be reserved, and hoping that we can get to some commonalities in the near future.
Mayor, so I don't, I want to make sure it's understood that I agree with the direction this is going. I agree with the recommendations, actually. I'm fine with the recommendations, but my issue is just with public outreach. I got a call from Susan Moffett today, who's been one of the leaders in the stewardship of the bulb, and she was concerned and a little confused about this item, and if others knew that this was actually an action item, perhaps they'd want to come and ask questions at council or state their views. And so I'm concerned that there's not enough notice, if you will, to the concerned citizens because this is a little bit hidden in the item. So if we do have a motion, I will likely vote no only for that reason, but otherwise I completely support the recommendations.
Well, Susan Moffett is here to speak to us tonight about this, so maybe she can clarify some of those concerns.
Right, before we...
I think the point of making a motion today is to make sure the money gets set aside. In the same way, for example, on the consent, there's SB1, and then there's some follow-up legislation that sort of makes sure that we don't tap into the SB1 highway funds, or that Sacramento doesn't. We're not setting anything in stone. We're saying, let's just set this money aside for now. If we want to have people come back and talk about how we spend it, we can put this back on the agenda and say, okay, now we're going to talk about what to do with the money that we set aside. It seems to be, if anything, erring on the side of caution. not
Right.
the other way around.
And it's somewhat a procedural matter that we didn't do what we had originally said we would do, so now we're simply going back and sort of making sure that everyone understands that we're postponing for right now. We're not going down a different path, we're just postponing.
Yeah, I think I'm also comfortable with the proposal. Perhaps, maybe if you could add in some way that if we are not going to spend it on the CEQA process and we decided to redirect it, even if it's redirected towards other things at the bulb, that it, come before the council on some level again. And in a process where the community could have some input.
Yeah, I'm not sure it doesn't say that. I think where I'm having a little bit of trouble, all it's saying is we're holding the money, until needed for preparation of a CEQA document, implementation of public safety, water quality, or other environmental protection, which is all sort of part of the same process. So I guess that's where where we have a difference.
And if you can scroll down to the second paragraph, the second sentence, the subcommittee will work with staff to prepare parameters for the use of these funds that can be incorporated into the fiscal year 18-19 budget for council review. So in no way would this not be decided at the council level in an open public meeting.
Right.
It's basically just putting the funds in a reserve account because the CEQA process wouldn't be initiated immediately.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that said, if it would come before us again, either as part of a budget or maybe even a separate thing, I think a separate thing would be a little better. But as part of a budget, I could get around that.
So do we need a motion on the table before we have public comment?
For anyone who is concerned, I wanted to make one other point, which is that I've personally done outreach, and I've talked with Susan, who is an art advocate, I've talked with a dog advocate, and I've talked with the board of directors of Citizens for East Shore Parks. So I think the most of the folks who participated in the transition study have been, and I also spoke with Whitney Dotson, who would be, indicated he would join a meeting that we might have with the Park District. So I think that the folks who participated in the transition study process are generally aware.
Are there any other questions from council? Okay, then I will open it up to public comment if there's any public that wishes to speak. Susan, can you speak into your mic a little better?
Is it off, Ann?
Does this work better?
Much better.
Oh, okay. Hi, Susan Moffett from Love the Bulb, which is a stewardship and arts organization that works at the Bulb. I think, as everyone has indicated, this is something that does need further discussion, which I think is a good thing. And I would say I appreciate the gesture of saving the money for the Bulb in a general way, and I think you're not deciding or limiting in any way exactly what that means tonight, because that needs to be discussed further. But I think that as far as any future uses of the money, just thinking about ways of spending that could attract other kinds of funding is one thing to think about. And also, I think nobody wants to derail the process of collaboration with the East Bay Regional Park District. So anything that would be consistent with the process so far might be useful. And I think that considering cultural resources inventory is something that would be useful, both if the EIR moves forward, and also it's immediately useful in a lot of ways. And so I just hope that I appreciate the support that the council has had for our stewardship activities. And I think that there's an opportunity for further nurturing the community of stewardship and care that is growing and is really kind of flourishing at the bulb right now. So I look forward to future discussions about next steps. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Okay, I will bring it back to council for final comments and to get a motion. Are there any final comments? Okay, the motion does have two parts to it. Defer the selection of a consultant to prepare the CEQA document and to designate the $300,000 that is budgeted for the CEQA document in the current fiscal year as council discretionary fund for the bulb. Subcommittee will work with staff to prepare parameters for the use of these funds that can be incorporated into the fiscal year 18-19 budget. If that's appropriate, I could get a motion.
As a member of the subcommittee that's making the recommendation, can I also move it, or?
Sure.
Okay, then I so move.
Is there a second?
I second.
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Pilch?
No.
Vice Mayor Nason?
Yes.
Mayor McQuaid?
Yes, the motion does carry. Okay, item 7.2. Councilmember Pilch report on East Bay Community Energy JPA meeting.
Yes, so there's a lot happening, and this is another item where, fortunately, we do have a follow-up action item on the agenda to talk about, but a lot has been going on in EBCE meetings. So we did try to have a meeting on the 21st of February. We did not have a quorum, so that had to be continued. But part of that meeting was to discuss the net energy metering policy, which was voted on at the following special meeting that was attended by my alternate, Mayor McQuaid. Just summarizing my report, there was a report on the outreach to customers, phase one customers, which would be the municipal and commercial customers. There was a report about the Oakland Clean Energy Initiative, where a peaker plant in Oakland is due to be retired, probably a dirty peaker plant to be replaced by hopefully a clean solution, a clean local solution. So there's opportunity to get involved with that. And I also, in conjunction with all the things that have been happening, I've had just tons of meetings with folks. I've met with a number of representatives of EBCE, and very recently I met with Tom Kelly of Kyoto USA, and final update, I spoke with CEO Nick Chassett on the phone just prior to this meeting, and I think Mr. Lieberman of EBCE also has some updates about that. It looks like they'll be able to accommodate us better than they thought they could, but we can go into more detail about that in the upcoming action item. And that's it for my meeting report. Did you want to say anything about your meeting, Mayor?
It's very odd to have a meeting that goes over 2 weeks and it's two different people there. It's a little strange. I did write a report. I believe it's attached to the agenda. I guess the more interesting part was approving a proposal for the initial new energy metering, the NEM policy. A baseline was agreed on with more adders to come as the local development business plan is finalized. And they're trying to get some of these adders in place before the June commercial municipal rollout. So that's why it's a little scattered for them. And that's basically all I have on that particular meeting. Are there other meetings that council wants to report on?
Yeah, I could report on two. On the 22nd, I attended the County Transportation Commission. It was a fairly light agenda with a update on current federal, state, and local legislation. Perhaps the most interesting part of that was the federal legislation is completely confused in Washington now, according to our representative. Nobody seems to know what's going on particularly or what exactly is going to be in the infrastructure bills or how those are going to work, but that seems to be the general word on that administration. There was also an update on the affordable student transit pass system, which is going to go into its third year of experimentation. I think if they can find the funding, ultimately students in Alameda County will get very discounted or free transit passes, which would be a wonderful thing. On the 28th, I was at the Waste Management Authority, and there was an update on the plastic bag ban, which is by November will be everywhere in the county. So one-time, one-use plastic bags will be forever banned, although I'm not sure they'll forever go away, but at least they're trying to get there. So.
Okay, thank you. Other council member reports? Michael, do you have anything? Rochelle?
Just parties for the parks. We were all at the Peggy Thompson opening, and several of us were at the opening of the new field surface at the fields at the foot of Gilman, which was a wonderful celebration too.
Thank you. And I was also at those. I did attend Supervisor Carson's Summit on Homelessness with Assistant City Manager Isabella Duke, and I'll have a more full report on that at the next meeting. And I was also honored to attend this California Park and Recreation Society District 3 meeting last week at the Recreation Department. They won an award for the Outstanding Recreation Program, which was Friends of Albany Parks. And the Community Foundation, as the partner, also received an award. And for future meetings this Wednesday evening, I'll be hosting a town hall with DA Nancy O'Malley and her staff on sexual assault, sexual harassment. It'll be from 7 to 8 at the Community Center on Wednesday, March 7th. So it's this Wednesday. Is there a city manager report?
Quick update on a couple of events coming up. First of all, another thank you for the attendance at the Peggy Thompson Pierce Street Park opening. Unfortunately, the picture doesn't show very well, but that is the beautiful park. The sun gave us some fair weather for about an hour, so we were delighted to enjoy that. And here's a photo of the crowd. So it was very well attended and a lovely park. If you didn't get out there to the opening, please go enjoy that new park. We continue to make sure that it's maintained adequately and continue to work through the lower grass area, and so you'll just see that continue to improve over time. Tomorrow, if you're feeling like you have some extra blood, we have a blood drive at the community center. Please join us. It's sponsored by the Red Cross. We also have our CERT signups open through the fire department. Learn what to do in the event of an emergency. That is an 8-week course, and it begins on March 13th. So you can check our website for the sign up. Also, the Civics Academy, another reminder that the Civics Academy will be starting up. The application deadline is forthcoming with a deadline of March 22nd. So please encourage you to sign up online for that. And also, on our website again, we have a number of open recruitments. One of the full-time recruitments right now is a firefighter paramedic. So encourage folks to continue to look at our website as we envision the recruitments to be updated regularly.
Thank you. Okay, moving to unfinished business, 10-1, consideration of possible ballot measures for the November 2018 general municipal election. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, this is a continuation of a discussion the council had in November, a year out from the 2018 ballot. The council reviewed a number of possible measures at that point in time, some of them possible charter amendments and also revenue measures. Staff is following up this evening with one of those possible measures in particular, but just to provide a quick overview of the funding measures, currently we have the half-cent sales tax, which was adopted by the voters in November 2012. And that measure provides general funding for citywide services, including police and fire protection. As discussed in November, the council gave general consensus to see that move forward to the November ballot. And again, the other item that was discussed was Measure R, or Landscape Lighting Assessment District 96-1. This measure is set to basically expire because the bonds purchased through the levy will be paid in full. Measure R has a specific percentage allocation for usage, with 50% for acquisition, improvement, and maintenance of open space on Albany Hill, 25% for acquisition, improvement, and maintenance of recreational playfields, and 25% for creek restoration and maintenance. As this measure is set to expire, we are looking at ways to make sure that the revenue is replaced adequately. And as we heard from the council in November, the question was, what is the funding needed and what would it cover? So included to your staff report this evening, you will find as attachment A some cost analysis of funding needs for ongoing maintenance and improvement to parks and open space. As attachment 2, you will also find some funding scenarios for a possible tax measure, a parcel tax measure. And the intent with the parcel tax measure is to achieve something that is either equal to or ideally lesser than the existing levy for the Measure R funds. I have our Finance Director, David Glasser, here to go through some of the details of the parcel tax, as well as Mark Hurley, our Public Works Manager, Director, and City Engineer, to go over the programmatic costs, as Council may have questions.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, we're just going to go through this briefly, but I'd be glad to answer any questions as we go along. So this is just a brief overview of what we look for, or what you should be looking for in the whatever funding mechanism you are deciding to replace the soon-to-expire Measure R. Second thought. So generally, the mechanisms that we want to look for are going to be, one, it's fair, and by fair, we don't mean it's good for everybody, but more and more increasingly in litigation, cities are seeing that they're being challenged based on the nexus between the assessment and the level of benefit. So whatever is, and I'll emphasize this a couple of times in the presentation, whatever you decide to replace Measure R with, it's important that we use an assessment engineer and the rate and methodology is defensible, and I'll leave that up to the city attorney to figure out what that actually means. Secondly, it needs to be reliable, so we're looking to revenue streams that will, year in and year out, provide those level of funding and revenue that will maintain the city's operations for those facilities. Obviously sufficient, and the Public Works Director can talk about what is sufficient, what are some of the needs that we have now. And so with that, again, nexus. The amount assessed upon those needs to really be tied to the special benefit received by that assessment. And again, I'm emphasizing this again because every time I talk to our consultants, NBS, and management partners about this is what they're hammering back to me. You need to make sure that your methodology is sound. The Howard Jarvis Association and some of the other taxpayer groups are challenging some of these cities because they don't meet that nexus test. And then again, this is what you see in your attachment. Just taking a look at what our current levy is, and right now we levy about $525,000 a year with the Measure R, and based on some of the needs identified by the Public Works Department as far as maintaining some of the facilities, some of which you just saw, the new Thompson Park, they're identifying about $450,000 of annual need to maintain those facilities. So what you see before you here basically just takes that $525,000 levy and says if we use the same methodology for assessing it, the new rates would be slightly lower. As an example, for single-family residences, currently for all single-family residences, we levy a $69 per parcel levy. That would be reduced to $59.11.
Can learn to understand you much better if I can get familiar with the way you talk. I need your permission to help.
I like that. Was that a commercial for Lexus, or was that a commercial for...
Sorry to interrupt, but I didn't quite get that last part. So you're going to... why would you levy a smaller amount? I'm sorry, I'm not following.
So currently, our levy, the methodology that we use for Measure R, all single-family residences, regardless of the size, are levied at the same rate. Now, the breakdown for the three different sizes was something that the council had considered when we were doing the sidewalk parcel tax. And one of the reasons, again, let's talk about the nexus. The nexus for that was the larger the parcel, the more sidewalk you had. So for something like, again, depending upon what you're using the Measure R for, if it's parks, if it's open space, the nexus for a single-family residence, really, maybe it doesn't matter based on the size. The level of benefit for that single-family residence might still be equal for all single-family residences. But in the case of the sidewalk tax, we did differentiate based on the size of the parcel for that reason.
Oh, sure. Okay, so that kind of answers one question, but my question is more about the right-hand side. What is the right-hand side showing us? It's a total, it's a smaller net amount, and why, I'm not following.
Sure, and so let's go to the funding needed part, and then we can ask Mark to step in there.
All right, so can you hear me? Okay, I think this will be fine. So the funding need, what we tried to do, well, taking a step back, Measure R includes funding for both capital and operating work. And so when the capital's done, the capital projects are done and complete, and so we don't need that funding anymore. But it also includes some operating tasks that we do. So we wanted to identify what those operating tasks are that are funded by Measure R. But we also wanted to use this replacement measure as an opportunity to identify areas where we think we're underfunded. And as we pointed out in the memo, and what I've tried to show here on this table, is that our current funding level for the maintenance activities in both at Albany Hill, creeks, parks and playgrounds, and urban forestry gets us up to, close to $923,000. I think what we need to be closer to is the 1.1 area, and that means we would be requesting some additional money for parks and playgrounds. That's primarily tied to the Peggy Thompson Park, the improvements we made at the Ohlone Greenway, and some of the other things, as well as trying to establish a little bit more money to invest in the park maintenance. And then again, we think we've been underspending in the urban forestry piece a bit, so adding a little funding there. But then in the column that says Measure R, those are the dollars tied to operating tasks that we're doing right now that are programmed into different plans that we would lose if that went away. So the total is a combination of those two areas.
Yeah, I think I get it. Thank you.
I had a question about the amounts that you figured out for parks and playgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
Is the money that we give to the JPA that runs the fields at the end of Gilman come out of these funds, or is it coming out of?
Yes, so that's the $15,000 in the Measure R column. So that's being funded through Measure R right now.
Okay.
This year, there was actually a little slight twist to that because there was, I think there's an annual contribution, which is $15,000, but then out of last year's surplus, there was an additional contribution, I believe it was $31,000 to go for the renovation. So I think going forward, we've assumed the $15,000 limit level.
Okay, because, there are more plans for expansion of either those fields down there or some kind of clubhouse or storage thing, bathrooms. Is that anything that we should be accounting for under future Measure R needs?
Well, so I think this is the combination of capital versus operating. So we've tried to capture what we would think would be ongoing operating expenses. And I think what you're talking about here would be capital expenses that would be handled differently.
Are you proposing a tax that does not end?
Yes.
A permanent tax, okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, well, don't go away, Mark. Oh. Sorry. Okay, so we're going to spend a lot more money on the far right on parks and playgrounds and urban forestry, and yet the total is going to cost less than what we're paying now for the old Measure R. So there must be a big chunk of something that we're spending money on now that we're not spending money on under, say, a proposed parcel tax, which I suspect is the land acquisition money, but can you explain that?
So there was a bond measure that we issued back in 1996 that's due to expire in about a year, and that was to fund capital for 50% for open space, 25%, and 25% for the other areas, but capital expenditures for those areas. That's correct.
So it's just done. We're just done with the bonds.
It's done, and so of the levy that we have now, we levy about $525,000 under Measure R. About $480,000 of it was to pay the debt service for the outstanding bond issue.
Okay.
One more component. Next week, our next council meeting, when we talk about the CIP, you'll see the sort of the detailing of how we plan to spend the remaining capital money.
And soon, right?
And quickly, yes.
If staff is done with their presentation, I would like to go back to that allocation question of the levying the same amount on all single-family residences. You would think that a smaller lot size would hold a smaller house and fewer residents, and a larger lot size would hold a larger house and more residents, and therefore there would be more benefit. It would make sense. More people would benefit in that larger lot from the parks because there'd be more people to benefit than fewer people in the smaller lot. So isn't that taken into account? Two questions. Isn't that taken into account when you do an engineer assessment? And also, I mean, to me, it seems like a matter of equity as well. Wouldn't it be more equitable to distribute it differently among the different lot sizes?
So this is just, and I didn't invent this, I just pulled it down from the State Treasurer's website. It kind of lists, depending upon what type of improvement you're trying to do, some of the special benefits that you can pick. So let's look at parks for an example. So the special benefit where you can look to maybe assess a greater amount against a property is, the proximity, the access to the green spaces, and the extension of the open area. So if you live closer to a park, that might be a reason for it. If you live, if you're a golfer, which I'm not, but if you buy a retirement home that's on the golf course, you're going to pay a little bit more than being away from the golf course. There are methodologies to differentiate that. I don't know that I think this is part of the argument that I'm trying to make, that you really do need to have a rock solid nexus between the benefit that you're trying to assess, and to further delineate it, we're talking about the special benefit, which you can assess. There's a general benefit to everybody that you're supposed to kind of carve out from your assessment methodology.
I see. So you basically feel it wouldn't hold water to have different
I think I'd like somebody who's been doing this to look at some of the cases that have been litigated and see what methodologies haven't worked. And there's been a lot of litigation recently against a lot of cities. So whatever methodology that I think the engineer comes up with would pass that test. And then the policy discussion of how to implement that would be the council's direction.
Okay. And just one more follow-up question. We're kind of, in a way, the proposal might leave money on the table in that we're proposing to levy a smaller amount per single-family residence, for example, or and I guess in all the categories than we are currently for Measure R. Aren't we leaving money on the I'll just state it that way. Aren't we leaving money on the table?
So what I also wanted to add to this staff report is that based on the discussion tonight, the next step in this process is to test a lot of these questions through voter polling. So there would be a variety of numerics involved in that. Would you support X amount? Would you support Y amount? And so we will test those to a degree. What you have before you is basically an instinctual, make sure that it's reasonably priced where we're currently paying that rate or less because that may be receptive. And it also, through our calculations on the need is indicated at about 450,000. And so that's where you see the numbers gel in the overall spreadsheet.
Before we go any further, David, were you finished, or Mark, were you done? I think we kind of jumped into questions faster than I thought. Okay.
So,
are there other questions?
Yeah, I have just a brief question. For example, under the newer, tighter restrictions, going from the old assessment districts to criteria for assessing a parcel tax, and if this is for park maintenance, why would we be able to assess industrial land, anything at all? We are assessing industrial land under the old.
And Craig, please step in if you have anything. But I would argue that just the value of having the parks in the community increases the property values of those industrial people want to more live there or work there, and the property values would be increased as a result of that. But you make a good argument. That's true.
I mean, what's being proposed is that the city consider moving away from a special benefit assessment to a parcel tax. So you don't have to demonstrate a direct benefit to the property in order to levy a tax. You can adopt basically any reasonable methodology that's not based on the value of the property. It can't be ad valorem. But otherwise, there's quite a bit of latitude to determine an appropriate methodology for establishing the amount of tax for different size and different uses of the parcels.
And please also note that in addition to parks, and that's certainly a large concept of this, but it includes creeks, parks, playfields, and urban forestry, which could directly impact any property owner in town in terms of trees in front of their right-of-way.
Yeah, in looking at the recreation departments, the Recreation and Community Services budget and actuals from the past, I noticed, first of all, that the reported 2015 to 16 actuals are substantially lower than for the figure for expenses is substantially lower than the figure in the CAFR, in the audited financial statement. The audited financial statement reported expenses of 3.15 roughly for recreation and community services, and our budgeting was based on 2.73 in expenses. So there was a difference of something of roughly 400,000 between the audited financial statement and the actuals. stated in the budget document. And then it goes up, I see, for this year and next year, it goes up to 3.4 million, so that's an increase of about 700,000. And I'm curious, I'd really like us to take a look more closely at what is driving, first of all, what is that discrepancy? Maybe that's the interest. Maybe there's some reason why those figures are different, but also why they have gone up so dramatically. What are we doing that we were not doing before? I could imagine the Pier Street Park increasing our expenses, but the number seems awfully big.
Yeah, I don't think Pier Street Park, that would have been still part of the capital budget up until this year. So
well, I'm looking at this year and next year, 3.4 million for our park and recreation expenses, as compared to we don't have 2017, but the 2016 actual was a little bit over 2.7 million. So I'd like us to delve a little bit more deeply into what is driving the numbers, because this is all supposed to be operating. It's not correct. This is all, whatever we see, both of these are supposed to be
operating only.
Reports on operating.
Correct.
Yeah. And I'm not against a parcel tax. I support a parcel tax for parks, but I think we need to recognize, Measure R was capital driven. It was basically you had people who really wanted to see land purchased on Albany Hill. You had people who wanted to see the creeks cleaned up, and you had people who wanted more ball fields. But it was all about new initiatives and doing new things. And I'm a little bit concerned that we're saying, we're already spending this, so we need to increase our tax rate to take care of what we're already doing. If that's what we're doing, that's what we're doing. That's okay, but I want to understand what is behind that.
Any other questions from council? Okay, we'll open it up to public comment. Do we have any speaker cards? Okay, Mr. Campbell, come on up.
No photographs this time. I'm either missing something or just plain confused about what a parcel tax is and how it relates to the benefit to the residents on that particular parcel. I'm looking at the sample levy that you had on the screen, and I was looking at the amount per parcel, and it just makes sense to me. I just don't understand it, because you have single-family residences proposed at $69 per unit, per parcel. Condos and townhomes, $51.75. 2 to 20 units, $51.75 per unit. And for multifamily units over 20 units, I'm not quite sure. I think I understand. It says $1,466.25 under the rate column, for a total levy of $8,797.50. I presume that means the $87.97 is per parcel, and there's 6 of those parcels. 154 units, that works out to $9.52 per unit on that particular category. And it just seems to me that rather than the size of the parcel, it should be the benefit to the residents in those particular parcels. And the residents in a building that has more than 20 units have individually as much benefit to be gained from this proposal as would a person in a single-family house or in a as in a condo. So that over 20-unit category just kind of confuses me. I don't understand why it's such a bargain for the owner of the property that has a 20-plus unit property. So that's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll bring it back. David, do you have a response to that?
So I don't know what people were thinking back in 1996, but it's not a proposal. That's what we currently levy in the left-hand side. That's what we currently levy. Those are the rates that are currently levied for property owners in the city. So this was merely just taking that existing levy, and if we kept everything the same, just moving it over and reducing it to the $450,000 level. This is purely a mathematical exercise. It in no way is endorsing the methodology is fine, and it was fine back in 1996. But again, I think whatever method the council uses going forward has to be explored and examined. And I think for the reason that the gentleman mentioned, it needs to meet that nexus test so that people feel comfortable that the level of benefit is proportional to the assessment on the property.
Yeah, I'm glad the gentleman spoke about that, because I'd been meaning to comment on that one as well, that didn't seem quite right, and that's worth re-examination. So if we're into comments now, personally, I would like to see the single-family residence also broken down and be more equitable. Some of this, it's very hard to come up. These numbers are always going to be somewhat arbitrary, but if single-family residences are broken down into 3 categories, it would seem that, and they're different sizes, it seems logical to me to levy different amounts on them. So, but I understand this is just the start of the discussion about how we're going to do this, but those would be my comments.
Yeah, and I wanted to comment on the issue of size, that larger houses maybe have bigger families. In my experience, it's actually kind of been the opposite. As you go west, where the houses gradually get smaller going west, you actually see more family activity. And we don't want to charge those people more, because those are probably our most budgetarily stressed families. But still, I think that saying, every unit pays the same, every residential unit should pay roughly the same amount seems fair enough.
Pete?
Yeah, I wondered if some of the rationale on the lower rate per unit for these large unit buildings, if there was any kind of thought about affordable housing, whether there was some idea that you're adding expense to big apartment buildings where the income might be lower, because that, in most cases, I presume that would be passed along to the tenants. But I don't know. If we have no idea what was going on in 1996.
The other thing that we can add in consideration as we move forward with the possible parcel tax measure is a consideration for low income, similar to what we did for the sidewalk parcel tax.
Yeah.
That's true. The parcel tax does afford it. The one, again, 2 things I did want to point out. One, we specifically can't tie it to the value of the property, so this is based on the level of benefit, not based on it can't be the ad valorem type levy. And 2, just as a plea from the staff, it has to be a methodology that doesn't really require a lot of work each year to recreate. So you want to have something that's relatively easy to implement each year. So when we talk about, things that you would have to check on every year, that would probably make it impractical for the size of this levy to levy it with something like that. So you want to have something that's fairly easy to replicate year in and year out.
Michael, do you have any comments? Okay. I guess my only comment is, yeah, I would like to look at the low income, what we can do with that. Otherwise, I think it's kind of a step in moving forward, and we will be talking about the polling and how to do that. And we don't need a motion, but you need direction. Am I correct, or are you comfortable where we are?
Generally, we've received direction unless the council has some major reservation to us testing the support for a parcel tax. And again, the test of support would be a variation of numbers as we work through that with our voter polling consultants who are have the expertise in this field to find what that range is and formulate the questions in just a way that they can be answered with ease. And then all of that would be presented back to the council with the findings of that voter polling survey for any next steps that the council may wish to take.
Do you have a timeline for that?
We will meet with the voter polling service this week, and then we will anticipate them going out to do the actual polling in April. They should return to the council in May with the findings of their survey.
Thank you.
Have you thought about tying it to any capital project that, you know, would be of particular and clear benefit, you know, that, and we all have ones, and I kind of like the idea of repairing, basically seismically retrofitting and doing other necessary retrofitting on the Veterans Building so that it's more usable for the kind of purposes for which we use the community center, which seems to be pretty much fully, you know, at capacity. It seems like if we fixed up the Veterans Building, we could accommodate more of those kinds of community activities that go on at the community center and that are so valuable. And I think that if we could say this is maintenance and it's a newly renovated facility that will benefit everyone, there might be interest in that. I'd like to just give it thought.
Okay, any final comments?
Yeah, so this, the title of this item is Consideration of Possible Ballot Measures for the upcoming election. So I assume we've had all the discussion for now on the extension of the sales tax measure. I don't recall if that was at a previous council meeting or not, but.
Yeah, in November of 2017, the council gave general consensus to see that carry forward.
Okay.
We would likely test that as well, just so that you have some more substance in informing your decisions.
Okay, that's a more simple one. So I guess now would also be the time to bring up any ideas for other possible ballot measures, and I would like to propose one. I would like to propose an advisory measure about allowing marijuana facilities in the city of Albany. We have so far prohibited all facilities except for delivery, home delivery, or I guess any delivery, and we have cited the fact that that the last poll on this was done some time ago. The last advisory measure brought to the voters was done on this some time ago, and that we don't have recent data. Well, we have a chance, and we have a chance to utilize a polling firm here to test our theories or test exactly what the sentiment in the public is about marijuana facilities. So I'd like to suggest that we I'm not sure if it makes sense to suggest putting advisory measure on the ballot and also polling about it, but either both or one or the other would be my suggestion.
Before we go any further, could you
I'm gonna
please?
jump in here. I think even though the ballot, the agenda wording does suggest possible ballot measures, if you look at the more detailed wording in the staff report, there's no mention whatsoever of a possible advisory measure on marijuana facilities. So if the council is going to discuss, I suggest you put it on a future agenda.
It sounds like we wouldn't have a chance to include it in the polling if we did that, and I do remember the direction from the city manager back in the fall that we would have a chance to bring up other ballot measures for consideration before all the gears turned.
I don't know what the timing is of getting the polling done, but I think if that's something the council wants to add on and have a discussion about, it ought to be placed on a future agenda.
Mm-hmm.
But is it possible that if this came up as an action item on the next council meeting,
We could work it in, definitely, but the nature of an advisory measure is that it's an advisory in nature. So I'd want to know what we were testing, because the other thing I don't want to do is overcomplicate the survey questions, because we're limited to how long somebody wants to sit and listen and answer questions.
Well, that was my concern, yes, because as I spoke it, I realized, okay, if you have an advisory measure, then you don't poll about that, because that's what the advisory measure is for. So maybe it'd be either one or the other, and but I was concerned about the timing of the polling. If we are going to if we're going to nail down the polling questions in the next week, then the next council meeting will be too late. So that's, could you speak more to that, Nicole?
We will be working with the consultants to develop that survey. We can agendize something for the next meeting if the council would like to agendize a discussion on an advisory measure or some variation thereof. That's fine, and I'm sure that we can work that in as a question if needed.
Okay.
Again, we would want to define if it's an advisory measure or an actual measure asking for action, because
Right.
that would really dictate whether it's part of the voter polling.
Okay, then I so request. Thank you.
Okay, Nick, if you don't mind, at the end, when we talk about future agenda items, would you bring it up again?
I can bring it up again. Thank you.
Okay, we're done with this now? Everybody's happy? Okay, new business. Update on climate action plan progress and request for proposals for consulting services for the preparation of a climate mitigation and adaptation plan. May we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Mayor McQuaid, members of council. Tonight, we'll provide you an update on the progress for our climate action plan and discuss the development of a new plan to reach long-term greenhouse pollution goals. We have a bit of a group presentation for you this evening, so I will start the conversation. Figuring out technical difficulties here. I will start the conversation by providing an update on CAP progress. And then Sustainability Committee Chair Nick Peterson and Vice Chair Samantha Smithies will be providing an update on the Sustainability Committee's CAP efforts. And our full-time Civic Spark fellow Chelsea Palevi will conclude the presentation with a discussion of the RFP for a new climate mitigation and adaptation plan. Something happened. Was that good? Okay, we have a plan B. In the meantime, I'll start talking about the Climate Action Plan 1.0. The CAP was prepared originally by city staff and consultants with considerable input from the public, and was adopted in April 2010 with an ambitious goal of 25% reductions in greenhouse gas emissions by 2020. The CAP outlines a course of action for the city and the community to reduce emissions through strategies that focus on building energy, transportation and land use, waste reduction, green infrastructure, water conservation, and food and agriculture. The next slide would require, good, perfect. Yeah, go to one more. Perfect, thank you, great timing, because I needed this slide. So in 2004, Albany generated over 83,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. Since then, we've calculated a 19% reduction in carbon emissions, as you can see up there. We've just shown the top 3 emissions sectors, so that's transportation, building energy from the commercial sector, and also from the residential sector, so that's all you see up there right now. It's important to note that measuring CAP progress is a complicated and imperfect science. We've had challenges obtaining important data from PG&E, so our last emissions inventory is kind of a workaround, an estimate. And changes in methodology for modeling vehicle miles traveled has skewed our transportation numbers quite a bit, so they've actually gone up, and that doesn't necessarily mean that vehicle miles traveled has gone up, it's just that the methodology has changed. So take that as it is. It's also important to note that while we've seen a clear decline in emissions, much of these reductions are likely due to state policies, such as renewable portfolio standards for utilities and fuel efficiency standards for vehicles. That said, our understanding is that this decrease in emissions is among the highest, if not the highest, in the county, so we still think we're doing well on our way to our goals. So our CAP is relatively complete. We have a large percentage of measures accomplished or in progress, and something has happened to that slide, but of the 86 measures, 75 are either completed, in progress, or ongoing. Next slide. Most of our CAP efforts have focused on energy efficiency and renewable energy programs because that makes up almost 2/3 of our emissions. We have been implementing our energy action plan for efficiency upgrades to municipal facilities, and we've worked with the school district to do the same. We've also completed an entire LED streetlight retrofit, including partnering with BART to upgrade lighting on the Albany Greenway. We have been successful in leveraging partnerships with a variety of organizations to implement energy efficiency programming and rebates, including obtaining funding for Chelsea's position through the Civic Spark program, and partnering with the EBU program to complete over 75 free energy audits and subsidize 59 lighting, refrigeration, and HVAC upgrades for Albany small businesses. Staff has been working with the county and now East Bay Community Energy to develop a community choice aggregation program that reduces or eliminates carbon emissions from electricity in Albany homes and businesses and focuses on the development of local renewable resources. Thank you. Our successful transportation strategies have centered around implementation of our active transportation plan, including complete streets planning projects, Ohlone Greenway path improvements, the UC Village cycle track and creek path, and safe routes to school infrastructure improvements at the intersections of Buchanan and Jackson, Marin and Santa Fe, and Marin and Curtis, as well as the Marin bike lane extension currently under construction. The city's Safe Routes to School program educates and encourages kids of all ages to walk and bike to school, decreasing traffic and pollution, and increasing the health of children and the community. The new Sidewalk program improves pedestrian safety throughout the city. The city has also received an Air District grant to install electric vehicle charging stations at 4 municipal facilities later this year to encourage the transition to clean fuel vehicles, both for the city's fleet and for the community at large. The city has revised parking and land use requirements to promote housing density, including streamlining the permitting process for second units as well. And some additional strategies. The city opted into Alameda County's mandatory recycling and organics ordinance, which requires businesses and multifamily buildings to provide recycling and organic services, education, as well as correct sorting, and city staff supports ongoing outreach efforts and enforcement efforts with Stop Waste for this ordinance. In 2013, a reusable bag ordinance went into effect, and staff worked to expand the ordinance to restaurants and all retail establishments last year in 2017. During the drought, the city installed efficient weather-based irrigation systems at all municipal landscapes, and the city's urban green infrastructure plan promotes the installation of rain gardens that sequester carbon and treat stormwater runoff. Staff also promotes conservation through a variety of outreach activities in the community. While the CAP is relatively complete, the implementation of the CAP has been quite challenging, particularly because there are really no proven methods for success in a CAP. This slide highlights barriers and enablers to CAP progress as experienced by the 10 Alameda County jurisdictions that took a survey administered by Stop Waste last fall. It's clear that constrained staff time and funding limits the success funding limit the success of CAP initiatives, but we've been successful in leveraging regional partnerships and grant funds to make real progress. We hope to overcome some of these challenges by focusing our new climate mitigation and adaptation plan on strategies that are achievable by a small city. I'd now like to turn the presentation over to Sustainability Committee Chair Nick Peterson to discuss the Sustainability Committee's review of CAP progress.
Thank you, Claire. Greetings, Mayor Quaid and City Council members. I'm happy to be here to share with you the Sustainability Committee's review of CAP progress and recommendations on how the City Council can act now to assist with this important civic effort. Our community's commitment to meet the state of California's goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions to zero by 2050 is the cornerstone of Albany's climate action plan and our status as a truly sustainable community. There are still significant challenges over the next 18 months if we are going to achieve a CAP 1.0 stated goal of 25% reduction of greenhouse gases by 2020. Why is this critical? Because it sets our trajectory in bending Albany's curve of diminished emissions to be zero by 2050. Well, sounds like a long way off, but there's a lot of work to do. Doing anything else is just kicking the can down the road, which is why we're in this problem in the first place. I encourage you to carefully review the detailed summary of Albany's greenhouse gas inventory performed by this Sustainability Committee that I recently provided to you. It shows that once the benefits of an unprecedented trend of warmer winters, actually global warming, are removed from Albany's performance measures, we are not on target to achieve our CAP 1.0 goal at all, and are in fact only trending around 17 to 19% reduction by 2020. And this is all, the science is all very blurry, but that's what it looks like. So to act decisively on this situation, the Sustainability Committee urges the City Council to take the following immediate actions. Number one, which fits in with your next item, which is great, notify the East Bay Community Energy Board that Albany City Council officially wants Albany's rollout of the EBCE's products to have the 100%, I think it's called Brilliant, carbon-free option as Albany's default for all customers in Albany, including residential. I know you're just looking at commercial and institutional right now, and that all customers in Albany are aware of the necessity of this selection in meeting our goals as a sustainable community. This is a no-cost option, as the 100% carbon-free option will cost the same as PG&E's current basic rate. Also informed the EBCE board that Albany City Council requests that Albany customers be offered 100% renewable energy option as at the inception of services, so that Albany customers who really want to can opt in to an even more sustainable option. Number two, pass a motion to direct city staff to establish a meaningful budget goal for infrastructure that promotes non-carbon emitting transportation and to track expenditures and meet goals for creating this infrastructure. And number three, work with the Sustainability Committee in passing a Building Energy Audit and Disclosure Ordinance, also known as BETO, that will provide property owners vital information on how to improve building energy performance and city staff with basic data necessary to track the energy efficiency of buildings within Albany. Speaking for the committee, we are confident that by working together as a community, we can keep Albany on track in supporting California's historic commitment to sustainability and in keeping Albany a role model community in the fight against global warming. I'd like to now turn our presentation over to Samantha Smithies, the school district's appointee to the committee, our newest committee member, co-chair, and Albany High School student who represents and will speak to our future efforts on climate action planned by the Sustainability Committee.
Good evening, Mayor McQuaid and City Council. Looking toward CAP 2.0, or CMAP, the Sustainability Committee will apply the lessons we've learned from our current climate action plan, as well as from similar programs in comparable cities, and continue to work proactively toward our long-term goal of carbon neutral. The Sustainability Committee looks forward to focusing on 3 key initiatives. 1, increasing Albany renewable energy production and battery storage, particularly through rooftop solar with storage in the community and in the schools, which will increase the viability of EBCE's renewable option and drive Albany further toward full neutrality. 2, promote adaptation of zero-emission vehicles, public transit, and active transportation through implementing city programs that support their use and through informational outreach to the community. And 3, outreach and education to reduce natural gas use for residential water and heating, with an emphasis on fuel switching to renewable generated electricity and linking this effort with city green codes. The Sustainability Committee will continue to collaborate with City Council and work to address any concerns. With Council's continued support and resources, the Sustainability Committee is confident that these initiatives can be achieved. Now, turning the presentation over to Chelsea Palevi, who will be speaking more specifically about CMAP. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor McQuaid, members of Council. While we continue to work towards our 2020 goals, we need to begin thinking about achieving longer-term targets. Albany City Council has committed to 60% reductions by 2035 and net zero carbon emissions by 2050. The City Council's strategic plan includes a measure to develop a new climate mitigation and adaptation plan for these bold new reduction targets. We are excited to work with a team of consultants and the Albany community to determine this vision for a carbon-free city. Next slide. Based on lessons learned from implementing our current climate action plan and the need to shift our focus to long-term goals, our vision for this new climate mitigation and adaptation plan is to have fewer, more flexible measures, focus on systemic changes rather than incremental changes, incorporate climate adaptation strategies to address the expected increase in extreme weather events and sea level rise, define relevant metrics to help us measure planned progression beyond greenhouse gas inventories, and identify potential implementation resources such as partnerships and funding. This new plan will provide an opportunity to reevaluate how we measure success. It will take a new approach, focusing on relevant, actionable measures and addressing deep decarbonization principles. This means that we need to include measures that may not have immediate greenhouse gas savings or any potential savings at all, but that are required for whole systems transformation. Within each sector, we will take exciting new approaches. In terms of energy, we need to have a better understanding of how the energy grid operates. On a community scale, what does grid support look like? What can local government do to support this? Both battery storage and electrification are fairly new technologies that we did not consider during the creation of our first CAP. Regarding transportation, studies show that the transportation sector is going to completely transform over the next 30 years. We need to focus on understanding this upcoming transformation and the impacts it will have so we can help support the development of a cleaner transportation sector in Albany. In terms of waste, to achieve carbon neutrality, we'll need to shift our focus upstream to waste reduction and to promote a more circular economy. So, our scope of work. The project will begin with a review of existing documentation and analysis of state and regional programs, and a review of best practices for long-term climate action. Community outreach will be performed, including engagement of City Council and multiple other committees and commissions. Our vision includes a clear definition of carbon neutrality, fully developed mitigation and adaptation strategies, and clearly define and prioritize measures that will be evaluated for both sustainability and equity impacts. Our process. Upon Council approval of the request for proposal for consulting services, we will issue the proposal and then interview and select a consulting firm. We will work with the consulting firm to perform research and outreach and create a draft plan. The draft plan will be reviewed internally with responsible agencies, departments, and staff, and then we will allow time for public comment. This feedback will be incorporated into a final plan, which will be presented to council for review and adoption. And this concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to take any questions or comments. Thank you for your time.
Thank you all. Is there any questions from council? Anybody? I have a couple then.
Okay.
When we do the new CAP 2.0, what's the time frame for that? And not for the implementation, but for, this one went until 2020. What does the next one do?
The time frame for the goals?
Right.
So it will look at actually two separate goals. So there's a 65% reduction goal by 2035 in line with our general plan timeline, and then carbon neutrality by 2050. So it actually has two years. So it'll be looking at both.
Will it sometime be updated between now and 2050?
Yeah, I would hope so, yes.
I hope so. And then my other question was regarding the energy audit that we had done last year. I think we did that voluntary. You're looking at me like you don't know what I'm talking about. Didn't we do a voluntary energy audit? And
for the city or for
the
homes?
city? Okay, maybe we didn't. I thought we had done some type of energy audit.
You're not talking about the home energy assessment?
I think probably I am. So what happened with that?
Oh, okay, so
Thank you.
So we're in the middle of a pilot project right now, or toward the end of a pilot project where we chose 20 homes to do. We gave them free home energy assessments, and we're still waiting for the data from that. So we've conducted the assessments of the homes, but we're expecting to receive data from that in the next week or so, and then we're going to analyze the data and bring it to the Sustainability Committee to have a larger conversation about how the pilot program went and successes and challenges from that, and then what kinds of energy efficiency programs we might want to pursue in the city.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions, Michael?
Yeah, I do have the mundane question. What's the timeline for the RFP for the finished product to be in our hands?
We have not discussed that yet, but we imagine sometime in 2019.
No questions, but I'll have some comments towards
Okay.
the end.
No other questions? Okay. Then I'll open it up for public comment. Do you have any speaker cards? No. Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to sorry. Come on up. That's okay. Come on, make your comment, and then you can get a speaker card after.
My name's Jean Wu. I've lived in this community for over 25 years, and we are very, very concerned about the ability of cities of all sizes to be resilient in the face of what we see as probably more and more harsh weather. And we think that as you go forward, you can really implement resilience in city properties and also in city parks and schools, and make it possible for there to be an internal system that's like a separate microgrid system that can support the grid if needed, but also support the community. And we actually do solar and storage and energy EV charging. And one of the things I think we need is actually to have EV charging on the street, so that when people come and park and they go shopping, they plug in. It could produce money for the city and also produce a real boost for people who actually want to charge their cars. They might come here.
Thank you.
Good evening. Tom Kelly from Berkeley. That was a very interesting presentation, and I really want to hand it to your committee and you for the depth and elements that were in there. One thing just came up the other day that got me as a homeowner that has solar, and I've had it for about 15 or 16 years. The investment tax credit will now be able to be applied to the installation of a storage system. So not only can you get the ITC, which is pretty hefty for a solar project, but if you fill your batteries with the solar power, you can get the 30% on the batteries as well. So it got me to thinking about not only our own home, but also the fact that our cities could be doing their tie-in with their emergency services, with the microgrids and everything, and do it at a much better price than maybe we've seen before. So I think this is great. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, I will bring it back to council for comment. Pete, you want to start?
I also think this is great. I'm happy to vote for going forward with a RFP. I'm hoping to see not only how we can continue our efforts to lower our carbon footprint, but also the adaptations that we're going to have to do as the climate heats up, as the oceans rise, as violent storms come in, because as I've said many a time, we can be zero carbon production here in Albany, but the world is about to go through some changes that we're going to have to adapt to, and what that means, and it's almost two different things that we're doing. We're trying to diminish it by lowering our carbon footprint, but we're also going to have to take measures to protect ourselves. And what are those measures? I look forward to seeing what they can come up with. So,
Nick?
Sure. I want to echo Mr. Kelly's comments about the presentation. Very nicely done, and very nice to see both of our staff members and the chair and the vice chair present. Really a beautiful presentation. And look forward to pushing even harder on sustainability measures as we go forward. And God knows we need to do all we can do.
Yeah, another echo in the echo chamber. You guys were terrific. It's especially encouraging to see people, a high school person taking this so seriously, because you can carry the message in a way that's harder for us oldsters. This was a very impressive presentation. There are a few areas where my uneducated, just gut feeling, I see opportunities that seem relatively easy. And Claire Griffin talked a bit about safe routes to school. I think that getting kids walking or biking to school will help support a lifetime of healthy habits and relieve a really terrible situation that's a bad safety situation, and it has to be a bad carbon situation. Another one is the issue of housing providers, how they can provide more energy efficient units. We have this problem that for a landlord, it isn't necessarily there isn't necessarily an economic incentive to upgrade appliances, whereas because it's the tenant who typically pays the utilities. And I think we should continue to search for that. The other thing, I don't know that travel beyond the city gets taken into account in this at all. If we could educate people about the carbon impact of international travel, and understanding that that there are choices that they can make that are that can still be interesting and wonderful, but that are substantially less impactful. The impacts of air travel seem like they escape this model, and it's astonishing when you look at that, how much impact it can have. Thank you.
Michael? Okay, I will echo the statements made by other council members. This is a wonderful report, and in fact, I'd like you to email us a copy of it. It's always good to have it to look at again. You know, I hear other mayors, other people basically across the country looking to develop a CAP 1.0. And I'm like, where have they been for all this time? So I think sometimes we kind of beat ourselves up that we're not perfect, but we really have done a lot. And for a small city, we've done an incredible amount. And we are ahead of many, many other cities. So we need to keep being a leader, but we are that. And I also think one of the things that you kind of touched on was sort of this whole culture of, for lack of a better term, sustainability, where it's not just the cap, but it's the way we look at our transportation and our housing and our recreation and all of those things coming together for a culture in this city that reflects these ideals. So I think that's really important to keep in mind. Having said that, I think we need a motion, if we're ready, to authorize the release of an RFP for consulting services related to the preparation of a climate mitigation and adaptation plan.
So moved.
Second.
Hold the council, please.
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Pilch?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nason?
Yes.
Mayor McQuaid?
Yes, and the motion carries. And thank you all for coming tonight. Okay, 11-2, requesting East Bay Community Energy enroll municipal and commercial accounts in the Brilliant 100 product. May we have a staff report, please?
All right. I think it's working now. The action before City Council is to approve 2 resolutions regarding the East Bay Community Energy electrical power mix. The Climate Action Plan calls for 25% reductions in greenhouse gas emissions by 2020, and the general plan calls for even more ambitious goals. Staff has been working to advance climate action through a number of CAP initiatives. Albany's CAP identifies community choice aggregation, or CCA, as a priority for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. CCA allows public agencies to procure a greater percentage of electrical power from renewable resources on behalf of electricity customers, while energy transmission, distribution, repair, customer service, and billing continue to be administered by PG&E. Customers retain the choice to continue to purchase power directly from PG&E by opting out of a CCA. City staff and the Sustainability Committee have been evaluating joining a CCA program since 2012 as part of the effort to meet the city's greenhouse gas reduction goals. City Council approved a JPA agreement to join the East Bay Community Energy, or EBCE, program in November of 2016. EBCE has been working to set power mix and rates and get ready for a June launch to its commercial, industrial, and institutional customers. Outreach to large commercial customers has commenced, and first notices to businesses will arrive the first week in April. Residential accounts will begin service through EBCE in November of this year. Just a quick note on definitions before I move forward on the power mix. Renewable electricity in this context includes solar, wind, geothermal, biomass, and small hydroelectric power supplies. And when we're talking about carbon-free electricity, we're talking about renewables plus large hydroelectric power. Sometimes the conversation about carbon-free includes nuclear energy as well. That's not the conversation that EBCE is having. The EBCE board approved 2 products at their meeting on February 7th for their initial launch of the program. The Bright Choice product is 85% carbon-free at a 1.5% discount to PG&E, and the Brilliant 100 product is 100% carbon-free, and it's supposed to be the same price as PG&E. EBCE staff recommended the Bright Choice power mix based on PG&E's 2016 power mix, which was 69% carbon-free. While official data is not available for PG&E's power mix for 2017 and 2018, their 2018 power mix is forecast to be 88% carbon-free. EBCE will need to improve the Bright Choice power mix over time in order to achieve any greenhouse gas reductions in that default product. While Bright Choice offers a 1.5% discount, it is important to note that this is for electrical generation charges only, which often comprises about 25% of an average PG&E bill. So it's not 1.5% on the total bill. It's 1.5% of about 25% of the bill. This means that for a typical Albany resident, the savings would likely be less than $1 a month. I don't have average savings for commercial bills because they vary so widely. EBCE has asked city councils to determine which of those two products to enroll its municipal accounts in. There is no financial impact for enrolling municipal accounts in the Brilliant 100 product, as it's the same price as PG&E. And according to EBC's initial rate analysis, the City of Albany municipal accounts could save a little over $1,000 a year if it enrolled in the Bright Choice program instead. Many cities in the Bay Area have opted up municipal accounts to 100% renewable energy option as the premium price to PG&E. EBC is not currently offering a 100% renewable product, but this is a list of the cities that have enrolled in a similar program. The Sustainability Committee discussed these power mix options at their meeting on February 21st and recommended that City Council direct staff to work on creating a 100% carbon-free option for all Albany customers as the default product and work to encourage the creation of a 100% renewable product as well. Resolution 2018-28 requests that EBCE develop a process to enroll all commercial customers in Brilliant 100 and expresses interest in doing so. It also requests that EBCE develop a 100% renewable product offering, as other CCAs have done. EBCE has not confirmed that the city is able to enroll all commercial customers because of the quick timeline for June. But this resolution expresses the City Council's interest in being able to do so. The LA Clean Power Alliance has asked all of its cities to choose their power mix, and the City of West Hollywood so far has decided on opting up their default product for all their customers. And Peninsula Clean Energy enrolled its Portola Valley customers in a 100% renewable energy default product as well. Brilliant 100 is not projected to have a financial impact on customers because it's the same price as PG&E, and customers can always opt down to the Bright Choice option at a discount or opt out of the program entirely and stay with PG&E. The City of Hayward City Council will have the same conversation that you're having tonight, tomorrow evening, and other cities in the county, including Berkeley, Emeryville, Oakland, Piedmont, and San Leandro, have all expressed an interest in exploring Brilliant 100 as a citywide default product as well. So Albany, like all other Bay Area cities, is unlikely to meet our 2020 reduction target unless the entire community is enrolled in a 100% carbon-free energy product. If Albany accounts are enrolled in the Bright Choice as its default product, it's possible that enrolling in EBCE will not result in any near-term greenhouse gas emissions reductions in Albany. Establishing a carbon-free default electricity product would allow Albany to showcase its environmental leadership and demonstrate efforts to create a sustainable community in line with the larger goals of the Council's strategic plan, general plan, and climate action plan. I'm happy to take questions, and Dan Lieberman of EBCE is also here tonight if you have specific questions for EBCE staff. Thank you.
Are there questions from council?
I'd like to hear from the audience first. I have lots of questions, but.
Okay, could you put the slide that shows which is the one that has the renewables and all the pieces? No, the one it's yellow. God, I'm so brain dead tonight. Now, That one. Is that the, yeah. Could you leave that one up, please?
Sure.
Thank you. Do you have questions?
I don't have a question, but I have some late-breaking news, and that just before the council meeting, I spoke with Nick Chassett, the CEO. He had reached out to me, and the staff has been, EBCE has been working very hard to try to accommodate this request. And they now think they can do it, and Dan can speak more to this as well. But it looks like those concerns are we don't have to be so concerned about those items, and we can perhaps move forward with these resolutions.
Which request are you talking about? I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Which request are you talking about?
The resolutions to opt up the city, both the city and all commercial accounts, to Brilliant 100, to the 100% greenhouse gas free product, which is the same price as PG&E. So that would be their default. These basically, that's what these resolutions call for, is that the default for the city and all commercial industrial in the city be the Brilliant 100.
Is that different from what the staff?
No, that's what staff is asking. That's what our staff is asking. But the EBCE staff had some concerns that they could not do this. They have now told me that they think they can do this.
Well, maybe we should hear from the EBCE staff.
Sure.
Dan, would you like to come up? No, I'm confused.
Hi, Dan Lieberman with East Bay Community Energy. To expand on what Commissioner Pilch was saying, initially staff was concerned that there were some legal language in our Joint Powers Authority agreement that would require additional legal steps to allow an individual city to have Brilliant 100 as the default service for all customers in that jurisdiction. And now we believe that we can accommodate that by offering cities the choice of what product would be the default product for customers in the jurisdiction besides the city. Does that make sense?
I guess I have to jump in and say I did discuss that issue with both the interim general counsel and the general counsel, and I got the opposite advice. Are you saying they're on board now?
I don't want to speak for them, but staff discussion is more around implementation at this point, and assuming that we can move forward with the blessing of council.
Yeah, because what I was informed, and maybe this has changed in a couple of days since I had those conversations, is that in order to move forward, it would require an amendment of the Joint Powers Agreement.
And what you're saying seems different from what you're saying.
Right.
No, I think what Dan is saying is part of the concern that the staff had, part of the concern that EBC staff had. They also had a concern about outreach. But Nick Chassett told me that he thinks that they can accommodate the outreach as well. There's a very a small timeline to get this all done, and so they're kind of scrambling.
But you were saying, you were talking about making this the default product for commercial. I don't know about industrial, or what was the other
Well, does the resolution address all accounts, or just, okay. So I think that some people would like to have us have all accounts enrolled in Brilliant 100, but tonight we're just speaking about Albany's commercial accounts, which are the phase 1 accounts to be enrolled in June.
And we're also looking at municipal, are we not?
And municipal, sorry, muni and commercial.
And I think the others were industrial.
Well, then there's all the residential accounts.
Are you grouping all those under commercial, or is commercial mean just commercial?
I think commercial and industrial, the same bucket, right?
Yeah, our phase 1 enrollment, which is June, will be all non-residential accounts.
Okay.
So anything in that field, with some exceptions. For example, there are some accounts in Albany that are on standby rates, which we won't be able to accommodate in phase 1, or net energy metered customers, which were discussed earlier, will not be included in the June phase, even if they're in a commercial facility.
And I can only tell you what the CEO, Nick Chasik, told me, which was that the interim council did have that concern, but we hired a council, and the new council thinks that we can pass a resolution at the board level in this month, in March, to allow this to happen. So I think you should speak to council.
I guess maybe their position evolved since I talked to them both a few days ago.
He said they were really scrambling these past Thursday and Friday this past week.
So Nick, I'm sorry, I'm still a little bit confused. What would then be different in these two resolutions that we have?
Nothing. All I'm saying is that there were some concerns about passing these resolutions, I think, from EBCE staff. They no longer have those concerns. They think they can accommodate these resolutions.
I would have a question which speaks to sort of a larger issue that's in some of the correspondence we've gotten. In your opinion, do you think East Bay Community Energy is behind some of the other community choice aggregations, such as Marin Clean Energy, which at one point we almost joined here in Albany, in terms of their ability to produce renewable energy, or the group in Silicon Valley? And if they are, do you have a theory as to why that might be?
Yeah. It's, I think if you judge the CCAs on their starting point, that we're at a very good starting point. When a CCA launches, it's buying all of its power in short-term contracts from a wholesaler, and then they develop their own contracts and their own local renewables over time. And we're pre-launch, we're pre-revenue, and so we're doing what every other CCA in California has done at that phase, which is to buy the cleanest, lowest cost power that we can at rates that are competitive with PG&E, while taking a fiscally conservative approach that we know we can repay our loans and put some money into a reserve fund. So I think our procurement our tactics are similar, and I think the outcome will be quite good. That said, MCE just built a 10.5 megawatt facility in Richmond. I think that's fantastic. After, they've been operating for 8 years, I hope we can do that in less than 8 years.
So would you characterize it more as a matter of growing pains that we are so new here in Alameda County as opposed to Marin Clean Energy, which has been around for some years now?
I think in year one we'll be much greener than MCE was in their year one, is what I'm saying. I think we're doing quite well now. I think our mix is clean. We're competing against a much cleaner PG&E than they were in their year one. So I think we have a great mix and very good pricing.
Well, one thing that isn't talked about in here, but that I know that the Alameda County East Bay Clean Energy Community Energy does have this idea that we're creating local jobs, and that was always a very important component to the whole setup. And I'm not sure that Marin had that, or some of the other CCAs went forward. I think it's really great. I have wondered, would that have slowed it up or made it more complicated to get to this, mostly 100% renewable energy or 100% carbon-free?
There are definitely trade-offs. I think that EBCE and its stakeholders have put a very strong focus on local jobs, probably more so than the other CCAs. But when we're setting the product mix and the pricing and making financial decisions, there are trade-offs about how local the renewable energy should be, how much renewable energy should be in the content, how carbon-free it is, how low-priced it'll be. And so the board members of EBCE will guide that. And, I'm confident that we can continue to offer an excellent product mix with a good amount of local renewable content as time goes. I'm hoping that stakeholders and board members will have some patience in the early years so that we can contract for and deliver on those sorts of projects. They do take time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions at this point from council? Seeing none, thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
We'll open it up, and we'll probably call you back up again. Don't go too far. We will open it up to public comment. Do you have speaker cards?
Yes, I do. Tom Kelly, Mark Melkin, and Nick Peterson.
Okay.
So, hi, I'm Nick Peters. I'm also an Albany resident, so I'm speaking to you as a resident now. So this all sounds a little complicated, and this is starting out in the whole thing, but I am here to encourage you to push East Bay Community Energy to have Albany be released on the 100% carbon-free. And I would also add, you should think this for the residential customers also. It's very important that we all move into this type of energy generation and purchasing, even though, Claire mentioned electricity is only 25%, we're going to change that. That's what we were just talking about. We got to get away from the natural gas and onto the electricity, and that's going to be a more big component of what everybody is spending their energy on, and it should come from renewable resources. Gas can't, there's gas. So there's a lot ahead of us, and this is sort of setting that tone so that when we get further into our next cap 2, I think everyone thinks of it rather than the CMAP, we're bending that curve down to net zero, and we start thinking more about what does net zero look like. And it looks like people having a clean electrical energy, using heat pumps to warm and probably cool their homes, as we know we had 100-degree weather here. And a lot of people are probably thinking of putting in AC. So if they're going to do that, put in the system that will heat and cool and use electricity from solar energy. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Kelly, I got to say, that's great news to hear that EBCE is essentially replacing the Bright Choice with the Brilliant 100 as a default. I'd just encourage you to go ahead and vote on that resolution that you have just to make it official. I may have said this in the past, but my colleague Ben Foster and I were working on a study that was funded by the Bay Area Air Quality Management District to look at the implications of what it would mean for a city to go 100% renewable, not just 100% GHG free. And what's happening is that the prices for renewable energy are coming down so dramatically that, for example, one of the programs in the peninsula offers the 100% renewable option at 0.8 of a cent per kilowatt hour. So for the average residential customer, that would be about $3 or $4 a month. MCE, Marin Clean Energy, just announced their new rates as a result of PG&E increasing theirs, and they're offering their 100% renewable product at about $2 per residential customer a month if they opt up to 100% renewable. In our study that looked at it, we determined that for about 0.3 of a cent, East Bay Community Energy could offer 100% renewable to everybody. So that would be about less than $2, about $2 or under $2 a month per customer. So we're getting there, right? We started at a point where it was almost unthinkable, and now we're at a point where we could actually make it the default. I'm going to suggest that maybe you keep this in front of you for consideration when you discuss your residential program and look at what it might mean to enroll your residential customers at the 100% renewable. It represents about 35% of the city's total load, so it would make a difference, and that would help generate more renewable jobs, more renewable power, and continue to show leadership for the rest of the program. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Hi, council members. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Mark Melgen. I live in Albany. I retired from PG&E 5 years ago, and I spoke at the city council in late 2016, At that time, I recommended that Albany join East Bay Community Energy, subject to a few caveats. Since then, quite a bit has changed. But first, let me just clarify, I am not speaking for PG&E. My retirement plan is fully funded. And I support whoever is likely to provide a better electricity supply. I have two comments. The first is something quite new. On February 8th, the PUC directed its staff to develop a new method for calculating the carbon emissions for a portfolio, supplying a customer. I did a quick calculation, and I don't know what's in Bright 100, by the way, but a 100% solar portfolio serving Albany's load would result in carbon emissions higher than just sticking with PG&E. Now, that seems really odd, but if you think about it, this building's using power at night. It's obviously not coming from solar, unless somebody's put some storage somewhere. The old method ignored that. The new method goes through on an hour-by-hour basis for each hour in the year and says, let's match the portfolio during that hour against the demand, Albany's demand, in that hour. So if you go for Albany through all the hours in the year, you have all these nighttime hours where Albany is using electricity, but it's not getting credit for any solar because solar's not generating. And so the GHG emissions just keep on piling up. Then during the day, Albany's load, whatever it is, presumably the solar portfolio is providing more, but that excess isn't counted in the new method. And there's reasons why it shouldn't be counted in the new method. So the bottom line is I'd really like somebody to double check my calculations. I'd really like it if you'd have somebody use the new method. By the way, the acronym, or well, the name of it, it's called the Clean Net Short Method. And like I said, the PUC on February 8th in a final order directed PUC staff to conduct workshops and flesh out the fine details of this with the possibility of implementing it by August for the integrated resource plans that all of the load-serving entities, East Bay, I'm sorry.
10 seconds. 10 seconds.
Can we?
About 10 more seconds. Keep going.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's...
No, just keep going.
All right. That's the main thing, and I will send a letter to Claire, and she can forward it to you, and it'll have links on what the decision is and my quick calculations and so on. The second concern, when I spoke here 16 months ago, I had not read far enough into the law. And at the time, I thought that if Albany got into East Bay, that they could get out with only a nominal fee. Actually, that's true only for the first 60 days. So, blank check is a really nasty analogy, but signing up with East Bay, oh, and by the way, the first switch from PG&E to East Bay, that's covered by something called the PCIA, the Power Cost Indifference Amount or something, and that's set by PG&E, by the PUC, excuse me. It's a number, you can look it up. I'm not talking about the PCIA. I'm talking about a hypothetical where if Albany decides for whatever reason that East Bay's product is not green enough or it's too expensive or whatever, and you want to go back, then East Bay has the right to impose an exit fee. They call it a termination fee, and it's described in Chapter 9 of, let's see, their August 2017 implementation plan. I was not aware of that, but it's under their, as I understand it, their sole discretion that if Albany ever wants to leave, East Bay will tell us what the fee is to get out. I think that's enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other speakers? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Oh, I'm sorry, there was one more.
My name is Tom Rust. I'm from Custom Power Solar. Gene is my partner
we live in Albany and we do solar plus storage installations and for customers all throughout Northern California. We're also a part of this greenhouse gas emissions group, which is studying greenhouse gas emissions for combinations of solar and storage. And I can say categorically that solar and storage combinations drastically reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Another thing that you should be aware of is that there are options for cities that can provide funding, particularly for schools which have nonprofit issues and can't take investment tax credits, such that they can fund solar and storage installations in a fashion such that they will be essentially making money every year up to the point where they pay off their solar plus storage installation, and from that point they're making all the money that that solar and storage facility would provide. So there are options that the cities can use to go completely green and not only save money, but eventually even make money off of solar and storage installations.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, come on up.
Thank you so much. So actually my colleagues, they had to go, but I was interested in this, the greenhouse gas emission since being an Albany resident. So I have one question regarding one of the slides that you have shown that we have 25% GHG reduction target by 2020. So in that case, so far we have 19% decreased emissions since 2004. And in that last chart, it was 2015. So in that one case, I can see it's the residential GHG emission, and one is maybe the multi-complex, and in which you have a small car there. So is it the transportation within the Albany city or outside? Within the city of Albany. So in that case, is there any option that, because what I see is we're talking about reducing the carbon footprint. So I know that most of people, they prefer to take BART service. So is there any possibility, just my suggestion, that we can have a common shuttle from somewhere from the midpoint of Albany towards the BART station so that people can stop? I see that a lot of people, because I just live across the street, only one person driving a car till the BART station and then coming back. So is that way possibly we can reduce some transportation emission within the city of Albany? Thank you.
Thank you. Any last public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back. This time we will bring it back to council for final comments. Michael, do you want to start?
Yeah, I have a lot to say, but, you know, I'm not really concerned so much about getting into this as getting out. And it's not clear to me. Let's just say we have three categories of consumers, okay? Municipal, commercial, residential. And let's say we exceed the 60-day window. What does it cost to get out? Now, you had quoted me some figures, Claire, was just a few dollars. But I'm just curious where those come from, because I think those numbers were for residential, but I'm not sure about commercial and municipal.
I think you're referring to the cost of opting out after the 60-day enrollment period, before and after.
Yeah, correct.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but I think it costs commercial customers $25 to opt out after that enrollment period.
Dan, you want to come up?
So there's a $25 per meter fee for customers who opt out after 60 days of service. and then PG&E gives those customers a choice that they have to make between either remaining on EBCE service for 6 months and then returning to their old rate schedule, or going on an interim market-based rate for 6 months and then returning to their original rate schedule. Traditionally, that interim rate has been lower cost than PG&E, but there's no guarantee because it is a market-based rate. But the administrative fee is only $25 per meter.
So you're saying, is that true for municipal customers as well?
$25
Is
per
that a fixed amount? That's not possible that it could change in the future?
I can't guarantee that, but that's the stated rate.
So you're saying if, for example, the city of Albany switches to the CCA, even after the 6-month opt-out period, we could go back to PG&E and you would charge us how much? $25 per meter. What does that mean?
Well, the city has, I should remember this number, I did all the calcs, but I would guess 100 meters. I'm just throwing a number out there. And if the city opted out its accounts, that it would have that cost. However, I understand, my understanding of what's being referenced here is a provision in the Joint Powers Authority Agreement for Albany writ large as a community exiting from the Joint Powers Authority Agreement, and I don't feel comfortable commenting on what that cost would be. I just don't have enough familiarity with it.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure you want to stand here for the rest of what I say. You know, it's up to you. I just am going to give some general thoughts. I think there's two problems here with the way this East Bay Clean Energy is set up. One is the state is pushing PG&E so hard for on its renewable portfolio standards. And you've seen already, PG&E is up in clean energy terms, is already up to 88%. The CCA is going to be chasing a moving target as PG&E's renewable portfolio standards binds tighter and tighter towards 2050. The game with renewable energy tends to favor first movers and economies of scale, and PG&E has those. What if East Bay Renewable Energy is going to depend on local procurement and local projects? They are not going to compete because the projects are going to be on a smaller scale in regions that are cloudier than what PG&E can do. So I think there's no reason that in the long term that you will do better than PG&E. Now PG&E, granted, you know, it's got to pay off shareholders, whatnot. But on the other hand, these CCAs create an additional layer of middlemen. It creates an additional layer of bureaucracy, and that is not socially costless either. There was a good analysis, Severin Bornstein, the energy guy at UC Berkeley Law School, did an interesting analysis of this. And the idea that East Bay Community Energy is really going to provide a cleaner mix in the long run, it doesn't hold in these conditions. That's one point. The second point is the difference between bright choice and brilliant is large hydro, pretty much. Is that not true? That was mentioned in the staff report. Now, the reason large hydro is not considered renewable is because it's a fixed resource. We aren't building more huge dams like the Grand Coulee anymore. So dams like that do produce carbon-free energy, but they're not really renewables. Because if you incentivize the building of new dams, you don't get more supply. So that is a big problem for me with going up to 100% brilliant energy, is that ultimately you don't want to have a system that just reshuffles existing energy contracts, because at any given point in the time on the grid, supply and demand has to meet instantaneously. That's how the electrical grid works. So if we just demand more contracts from large hydro, somebody else gets less contracts, and maybe it makes us look good on paper, but it doesn't change the facts on the ground. It doesn't change what energy generation facilities look like. So in that sense, I don't really see the point in going up to 100%. In the Brilliant Plan, there's some other problems too, is that small hydro tends to be run over the river more so than large. Run over the river means it's not really dispatchable. You can't really flexibly adjust the output very quickly. California has some large dams. We all heard about them when they started breaking. But California dams are dual purpose. The one is flood control and two is energy generation. So it's not necessarily always going to be dispatchable. And then, of course, you can probably get all the way up to the Columbia River. Then you have a pretty big, consistent set of dams, Grand Coulee, et cetera, et cetera. So my question is, if we go up to bring it 100, for example, and we have another drought and all the reservoirs are down, I would imagine the price of, large dam hydro and even small dam hydro is going to go up because we're in a drought. And that's going to make it hard to match PG&E's prices. So that's something to consider going forward. And generally with CCAs, this idea that you're going to remain on parity with PG&E is not promised. MCE at the beginning got away with a lot, using a lot of, pretty sketchy renewable energy certificates. And that also is not, I think, is not allowed much anymore. And I'm pretty sure you're not relying on those. So let me just finish up. Just one major point. At grid scale, there's no such thing as 100% renewable energy, because as the points that Mark just made, you've got to back it up with something, and typically that's gas, and often it's fast ramping gas. I showed folks the duct chart already the last time I talked about this. So we need to be really careful about patting ourselves for the back for reshuffling the deck of contracts, which accomplishes nothing because CO2 is a global pollutant, and that's the whole point, is to create facts on the ground that reduce the amount of CO2 that gets put out regionally. I'm not sure these plans accomplish that, frankly. And I think some of these new accounting methods that Mark talks about are trying just to grapple just with that issue. 100% renewable grid scale is not for real. So my recommendation that comes out of this, as long as it's really the case, if this program goes south on us, that as a community we can walk out, okay, let's go forward. But I'd go forward with the lower cost plan. It's also just good politics. People are going to be mad. We're going to slam the whole community and say, guess what, we changed your provider and we didn't tell you, or maybe we tried to tell you, but you weren't paying attention. It would sure be nice if they're paying a little bit less for electricity, because that will make them feel better. So that's my pitch. My pitch is that we go with the lower cost product. I think it's smoke and mirrors to use large hydro to get up to 100%. And it's not something I can support.
Okay, do you have comments?
I guess I take a different view. I think we should go forward with these. Yes, it's not perfect at this stage, but I think we're asking for a higher mix of renewables going forward. And I think this is going to be a changing phenomena, as new technologies develop, as new ways of storage develop. I guess I have some belief that things will improve. That would be my comment.
Okay. Nick, do you want to give us your comments?
Do you want to go first, Rochelle, or okay? Well, let's see. First of all, thanks to Mark for the information that he brought to us about the new methods of calculations and the work that's going on there. That's interesting stuff. And the discussion about storage is a very interesting one that I've been talking with a number of people about. I'm interested in it for my own residents, actually. But I think, so to address a few of the comments that I heard from Councilmember Barnes, that we're chasing a moving target, we might not do better than PG&E. From what I understand, the other CCAs are already doing better than PG&E and are consistently doing better than PG&E, so I'm not sure about that statement. You know, we belong, the reason the CCA, CCA as a JPA is formed with representatives from all the cities is that we can weigh in and we can say what we want, which is what we're doing right here actually with these resolutions saying, you know, we care about GHG reduction and we really want to take the higher priced product because it will get us further GHG reductions, and that has actually resonated with the EBCE staff where they're saying, okay, yeah, let's do that. You know, we want to accommodate you. And I think that also by saying that we want the greenhouse gas free product, we're making a statement, we're using our buying power, we're using the power of the dollar to say we value this GHG energy much more than we do, GHG free energy much more than we do dirty energy, and so dirty energy becomes less attractive to sell. That's another part that we play in all this. So I think we should respect the opinions. I've had, let me step back and say I've had a lot of conversations about this just over the past week with many of the people in this room, as well as other staff and others. And I am firmly now behind the staff recommendation and not only the staff, but the sustainability's also strong recommendation that we go with the Brilliant 100 and opt up our commercial accounts to Brilliant 100 as well. Now that said, I've also in those conversations, there is the caveat that we need to message this well and we need to do the outreach well so that people know exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it. And we don't want that commercial account to say, hey, you know, I could have saved a little money here. What are you doing? You know, we want them to know why we're doing this and the fact that they have the choice of opting down if they want to. We hope they don't, but they will have that choice. So that's got to be a big part of this, but I fully support the staff recommendation.
Rochelle?
Well, I'm one of those people who really is deeply concerned about hydroelectric, and I'm very disappointed that we don't have an option to get away from it. I think that there are, I'm guessing here, I haven't done polling, but I think there's a lot of people in Albany who would feel very much the same way and would like to see a 100% renewable option. So I'm glad as I understand it from the documents, we're going to be encouraging EBCE to get that done as soon as possible, to make that available. I also have a concern, and I would like to know what the risks are, the financial risks to the city, if there are any, from, you know, if we sign up for this and then PG&E gets consistently greener than what we're getting, you know, is there some financial risk to our switching to something else? And I have an institutional concern. I mean, I'm hearing there's a big rush, there's all this stuff that needs to get done, but the organization didn't get a quorum for its meeting just very recently. And that makes me wonder, is the commitment there at the leadership level to make this a success. To me, that's a very concerning item, especially when, we are talking about, as Michael Barnes said, there's more, we've encouraged the entry of another middleman, and we want to be sure that the middleman is seriously committed to success. And so the lack of a quorum during a really important time period is a little bit troubling. I will support the staff recommendation with those reservations, with the comment that I think people would pay more for greener energy, and I'm disappointed not to have that option. And that I would like to know if the board, if there are changes at the board level that are needed, or what is, maybe Nick, you have some understanding of why there was not a quorum, or if that's reflective of a deeper problem, or if it was just sort of a strange coincidence or something.
I think it was a strange coincidence. That was the first time that it had happened, and staff had polled to make sure that we would have a quorum, and then one member who said he would be coming did not come, and I think that's the only reason why.
Okay, so I'll support the staff recommendation, but I would like to know, maybe between now and the next meeting, what is the financial risk here to the city if East Bay Community Energy is not successful in doing better than PG&E over time?
And I'd like to take a pause right now and move that we extend to 10:45.
I'll second that.
Could we do it by consensus?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're all nodding, so we'll go on. I think I have to agree with pretty much what everybody has said. I do share the concerns that Vice Mayor Nason mentioned about the big hydro, and I really want to push that we get to a more renewable mix as soon as we can. I think the outreach to the community is really, really important. We saw tonight, I think, an example that in our minds, we have done a lot of research on sidewalks. We've talked about it ad nauseum, and yet we had comments that no one told us. So I think it's important that we go way beyond what we think is reasonable with outreach. And I think that's not only on us, but I think it's on the East Bay Energy Group too, that it's a partnership of getting the word out to everybody. We're in this. I don't think we're going to want to opt out of the JPA, so that financial piece doesn't particularly concern me at this point. But I do have some concerns. If this feels really rushed to me, and I went to half of that board meeting where we did the NEMS and we had to do it, and it wasn't totally fleshed out, and there were concerns and all of this, but we had to move forward, and that didn't feel really good. And in some ways, this feels the same, that it's the right thing to do, but I'm feeling like, but we have to do it right now, and there's not time to make it better. So that does concern me. And I see that you're nodding, and I'm sure that as a council, you'll take our concerns back. Having said that, I think the Brilliant 100 is the way to go. If the price point is the same, it's a good thing. I really do encourage, though, that we get away from the big hydro and get to a more renewable mix as quickly as we can. So is somebody ready to make a motion? And before you do, I just want to check with staff. The two resolutions we got that have been corrected, they're the ones that we're voting on?
So, yes, thank you for clarifying that. So the first resolution, 2018-27, the amended version just authorizes the city manager to work with EBCE staff. So we recommend that you pass the amended resolution. The second resolution, 2018-28, we amended based on our understanding from EBCE staff late last week that it may not be possible to enroll commercial accounts. Now that information has changed, and we actually recommend that you pass the original resolution, not the amended resolution.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So we're only voting on 27?
No, we're voting on
We're
both.
doing both.
Voting on both, but 27 is the, for the amended resolution,
Amended.
and 28 was the original one.
I would move resolution number 2018-27 as amended, requesting East Bay Community Energy to enroll City of Albany municipal accounts in Brilliant 100 electricity product and develop a 100% renewable product offering.
I'll second.
Okay. You want to do the other one?
Well, we probably have to vote first.
Oh, I can do both, okay. And then also Resolution 2018-28 requesting East Bay Community Energy to enroll all City of Albany commercial, industrial, and institutional accounts in Brilliant 100 as the default electricity product.
Okay. Oh, we're voting on both of them at the same time? That's fine with me.
Fine.
Yeah.
Okay, was that a second?
Yeah, I'll second that as well. Okay.
Okay, I have one more question for Dan, I think. Where this reads commercial, industrial, institutional, and you said there were several that were not part of this. Does that need to be pulled out, or is this okay? Okay, that's all I needed to hear.
Why are we voting on both simultaneously? They're two separate resolutions. Wouldn't it be better to vote on them separately?
It's up to the council whether you want
Yeah,
a
we-
combined motion or a separate.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if
To us.
Okay,
yeah.
let's,
It's cleaner.
So why don't we do Resolution 2018-27?
okay.
Still second? Councilmember?
Yeah, and it's still seconded, yeah.
So you're,
Councilmember Barnes?
No.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Pilch?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nason?
Yes.
Mayor McQuay?
yes. Okay, you want me to?
Okay.
And then the second resolution on number 2018-28, requesting East Bay Community Energy to enroll all City of Albany commercial, industrial, and institutional accounts in Brilliant 100 as the default electricity product.
Second as well?
Councilmember Barnes?
No.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Pilch?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nason?
Yes.
Mayor McQuay?
Yes, and the motion carries. Thank you all for coming tonight. We have a few more things to do, other business announcements, future agenda items. Councilmember Pilch, I
Oh,
had
yes, you
heard-
requested that I restate my
Right.
request for a future agenda item, which I think would have to be on the next council meeting because it's timely about the consideration of a advisory measure on for allowing marijuana facilities in the city of Albany.
Okay. Are there any others? Okay, before we adjourn, Ann, can you put the photo up? We're adjourning tonight in memory of Garrett Krebs, who passed away unexpectedly on February 25th. Garrett was the son of Albany Police Reserve Sergeant George Krebs. I'm waiting for the photo to go up. Garrett graduated from Albany High School in 2012 and was a recipient of the Albany Police Activities League Scholarship. He was always willing to assist Albany Pal at the bicycle rodeos and other events. He attended the first Albany Police Youth Academy and continued to help and mentor younger APAL kids in future classes. Garrett participated in the El Cerrito Police Department's Police Explorer program and previously worked as a parking enforcement officer for the Albany Police Department. He was a graduate of the Police Academy. And we'll take a moment to remember Garrett. And with that, we're adjourned.
Garrett?